Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to Respawn Station. My name is Sri Kandula, and today I'm joined by Nick Sivak for
Hello.
the 30th episode of the Respawn Station podcast. Holy crap, Nick! We're flying through this thing. I mean, I think we're like on speedrun levels here. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
possible to speedrun a podcast. I suppose a weekly is. I mean, maybe 2 times a week. Is there a daily? I guess there are daily podcasts, so I guess maybe we're not quite up to that level, Nick. But gosh darn it, are we not pumping these out on a consistent basis? And thank you guys for watching them on a relatively consistent basis. You know, like there's hits and misses. Some episodes I feel like we've definitely flopped. So if you want to go back, go check out some of the episodes that are like not as popular. You might find that Nick and I make some joke that you would find amusing, and you know what? That's worth it. You know, that's worth the price of admission, Nick. Wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. And
Now,
there's longer YouTube essays than episodes of our podcast. So
yes, yeah, you know, and we're not all just recapping the entire plot of The Office. So but but I will say, we did just put out episode 2 of Retrograde, an absolute nightmare of an edit. Not like logistically, but that I had to export that episode like 5 times, Nick. It was absolutely crazy. It was the 4th time I uploaded the episode, and I was like, oh, I finally exported. Let me upload it, and this 2 hour and 5 minute behemoth of a review that Nick and I had review discussion. I went to look at it, and I was like, wait, why is this YouTube video only an hour and 7 minutes? Don't know what happened to the rest of that video, so had to re-export a 5th time. So no, it is a good episode. It's pretty, like, I mean, I don't want to say in depth because I don't. Maybe like some people might get more in depth and technical with everything, but I think we covered like so much about the game, including so many different story beats, and I think it's a good episode to watch because it's not
covered
like
a lot of ground in 2 hours.
yes, and it's not like Space Marine where we're both had the exact same story, so we're not just going through the same thing. It's a bit different. Now, I will say, Nick, I think that to start off this question, obviously every episode we ask ourselves the very important question about what we're playing right now, and for the first time in like 2 weeks, we don't have to say we're playing Dragon Age and not talk about it. But I will say there's something that I forgot somehow in the 2 hours that I did not mention in the Retrograde episode, which is why the hell are the subtitles at the top of the screen in that game? Like you're cutting off faces. Like isn't that basic? Like don't cut off the forehead. Go down. Like you can get rid of the chest area, but like. There was a cutscene I was watching, like, I was getting footage while I was editing the episode, and I was like, my whole character, like, it's like my character has a mask over their head because of the subtitles. I'm like, come on, let's move that down. But anyway, I digress. Go watch. Do you have anything?
It's definitely
you forgot
it's
about?
a weird choice,
Dragon Age
but
that you forgot to mention in the main episode.
not really, honestly. I think I covered most of
That was the only thing
what I had
later on. Now, Nick, it is very exciting now. Now that we've passed Dragon Age, what are you playing, my friend?
So I've been playing 2 main things this week. One of them I know you've been
Yes, well,
you've also been playing.
You've also been playing.
So I'll start with the thing that you're not playing, just so that we can, get something a little bit new. So
Sure.
I went ahead and downloaded the Metaphor ReFantasio demo. This was a demo put out by Atlas. It's free on, I think, most of the storefronts and stuff. So if you have Xbox, PlayStation, you can download this and give it a try yourself. This Metaphor ReFantasio, for those who aren't familiar, is a new IP from the Studio Zero, who work on the Persona games.
Yep.
Of which I have only played Persona 5 and Persona 5 Strikers. So I'm a relative newbie when it comes to this series. But this demo, it's, like I said, it's a new IP. Persona kind of takes place in the modern day, usually with high school students and, typical kind of anime plot of, fighting demons and all that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, Metaphor is a bit of a departure in that it's more of a fantasy setting. So instead of, high schoolers dealing with, you know, mean old adults, you're looking at like, still kind of young adults, but wielding swords and magic instead.
Which makes them better.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of weird because you do that in Persona, but like thematically, like castles, dragons, that
Sure,
sort of
right.
mindset versus modern day, Japan. Um, yeah, this demo is beefy.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my first question. How long is this demo?
Would you like to venture a guess as to how long I played the demo for?
I think a meaty demo, okay, is 3 hours. Like, I think if it's a 3 hour demo, I'm like, okay, you've given me a taste of this, like a chunk of your game. Hit me with it.
Sri, this demo, they describe multiple times with voiceover in the demo that this is just the prologue.
Oh, okay.
This demo, my save time was 7 hours when I finished it.
Jeez, dude. Oh man. So okay,
So
but you're playing through the entire prologue in this? Is that
basically, so
okay?
whenever you
Okay.
install the demo, it has a little bit of text up front saying that it's the prologue of the game. And it's basically, to my knowledge, just it starts you at the beginning of the game and you're playing through up to a certain point. And then they do have functionality where you can transfer your save file from the
Okay.
demo to the full
Yeah.
game if you get it. So I believe pretty much what I played. It said there was like a disclaimer that said, things might not be like exactly final in the demo, so some things might switch around, but it by and large was just the beginning of the game that you get to play through in the demo.
Sure.
So over the last couple nights, I've been chipping away at it, and it's pretty cool. Um, it definitely has DNA of at least Persona 5 in things like how the world is constructed and how the gameplay kind of feels, but it has different tweaks and different improvements that make the gameplay, it's different but very familiar feeling, right? This is like an Elder Scrolls and Fallout kind of situation,
Right. Yeah.
um, stuff like that. So, um, to give like a basically like a primer, I guess, because Sri, are you at all familiar with Persona and how it's played?
I mean, from my, I played like a little bit of whatever Persona was on the PSP or PS Vita or one of those.
Hmm.
But either way, from my understanding, you play as a college or a high school kid, and then part time you're like a superhero or something. Something's going on, but it's turn based combat, and it's kind of like a dungeon crawler. Not dungeon crawler, I'd say, but like something with dungeons. I think there's dungeons in there. The word dungeon pops out, but
Hmm.
that's about all I know. Oh, and Joker. I think Joker is also something I know.
Yeah, Joker's the main character from Persona 5.
I pretty much played the game.
Yeah, I actually wanted to mention because Persona 5, whenever I finished that game, it was over 100 hours when I hit
Yeah,
credits. And so if the prologue is 7 hours, definitely gear up for another long game. Those of you that are, thinking of hopping into Metaphor here. But yeah, you basically summed up a very broad stroke of the gameplay. It's turn-based combat. Um, it's I'm only going to use Pokemon because it's like an easy kind of point of comparison where
this just in
enemies
metaphor
enemies
Refantasio's like Pokemon. That's the title.
yep. Um Enemies are kind of like they have strengths and weaknesses like Pokemon have. So like say there's like a weird grass looking knight. It's not quite that simple, but just to paint a picture, if you use a fire attack, you're going to do, increased damage and other things that I'll get into. If you use like a grass attack or something, it'll do not as much damage. So enemies have strengths and weaknesses. Um, the way that it differs here is in a couple of different ways. The turns themselves are made up of actions. And this kind of worked this way in Persona 5, and I believe in some of the other ones, where each person in your party basically gets an action that they get to do on the team. And that comprises your turn, more or less.
Right.
And actions can be a number of different things. So you can use like your melee weapon, you could use a magic spell, you could choose to guard, which means that you don't attack, but you'll take less damage if you're attacked, like in the next turn. And there's other things that I'll get into, but like using an item costs an action. There are ways to augment your actions, and this is kind of like in Persona 5, basically, you could sneak up on enemies, and as long as you got the drop on them, you would get like an advantage. So first of all, you would start first, but you would also, be able to start setting up different things, in your turn to basically give it so like you get 2 turns at the start, if that makes sense. In Metaphor, they've introduced like some very light action elements to the mix. Because in Persona, it was just kind of like, sneak up, hit the button once you're in range, and then you're going into the turn-based combat. In this, you get to actually like swing your weapon around outside of combat. And if you go up to enemies and kind of like start hitting them and comboing them, you'll build up a stun gauge. And once the stun gauge is built, if you then go into turn-based combat, the enemies are all going to be stunned for a full turn. So that automatically gives you 2 turns at the start where basically you don't have to worry about anything coming your way.
Right.
Which I think it's a small thing, but I think it makes it a lot more fun. Just like exploring the world instead of like constantly being like, okay, like turn-based, okay, out of turn-based, turn-based, out of turn-based, turn-based, out of turn-based. Like now it's just like a little bit more dynamic, and it gives you like a fun bonus right at the start.
Right.
One thing that I really like is that Persona in this game, they use like a tiered enemy system, and it's usually color-coded where it's like low-level enemies are blue, mid-level enemies are yellow, and like really tough enemies are red. Any blue enemies that are out in the world, if you just start attacking them, it won't even go into turn-based combat. It'll just kill the enemies and you'll get experience.
Oh, that's pretty. A little bit cuts out some of that dead air almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, old games like Earthbound and stuff, like once you hit a certain level, just random encounters would just auto-complete themselves. So it's always nice to see that where it's like, if you seriously are just going to like waste your time against these enemies, like we'll just bypass a little bit of that. So I was a big fan of that. I started this talking about how enemies have weaknesses, and if you are able to exploit an enemy's weakness, it basically gives you a turn action back. So you can't like infinitely have your turn last forever, but essentially you'll get like an extra turn action that, the next person in your party can use if you're chaining together exploiting weaknesses for all the enemies.
Gotcha.
So what this basically leads to with the combat is exploiting weaknesses, getting a bunch of bonuses, and then if you take out all of the enemies without taking a hit, basically you get extra rewards for beating that battle. It comes up on the screen as unscathed triumph, which is like really epic. But yeah, basically like you'll get a bunch of bonus stuff if you can do it without getting hit. Now these games can be a little bit challenging at times, so you're not always just going to be able to like, curb stomp a group of enemies.
Sure.
There was even some fights in the demo, like I was just playing on normal, and I got pretty close to team wiping if I wasn't being careful. So there's a lot of things that, help out your combat in that way, but kind of like Persona, there's also a lot of weaknesses that your own team has and other things that the enemies can do that will always keep you on your toes. So for instance, I was describing how you can attack the enemies to build up the stun gauge before you go into turn-based combat. If you are attacked before you're able to stun them, then basically the inverse happens where the enemy gets to go first, and that can be really devastating. Like right at the top, if they have like a certain
That would
lineup
suck.
or like buffing their, their party right on turn one, uh, that's pretty tough. One thing that I learned about earlier today when I was playing is party members on your team can be inflicted with anxiety, which I don't think this has been in any of the other
Huh.
games that I've seen. But anxiety basically causes enemy attacks to not cost any turn actions, and your person that has anxiety can't use their archetype, which is kind of like their persona in this game, which is like,
Oh, I
a
see.
super powered thing. So like if anybody gets inflicted with anxiety, like it's pretty brutal for the punishment. Um that like your team has to, work
Yeah.
around now.
Yeah. How do you
So
get rid of
while
anxiety? Other than like
there's
smoking weed
certain
or something? I know.
there's like consumable items or like,
Okay.
just, waiting a couple turns, it'll go
Gotcha. Okay.
away. Um but yeah, let me see. I have some notes here. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting
I mean,
everything.
look, 7 hours is such a meaty chunk of game. I know for a game like this, it's
Mhm.
not even like you're barely scratching the surface, but you could probably get a we're going to talk about it later, but like Starfield, that's almost the size of the DLC that we're that we're playing. So
Mhm. The other thing that I found interesting about the combat, I'm talking a lot about combat up front, but there is a little
sure.
bit extra to this demo. Uh, as far as differences with Persona, excuse me, there is a lane system in this game, which I can't really think of any RPGs off my head that I've seen this in. I'm sure that it has existed in others, but basically there's a front lane and a back lane, and you can move your characters between both lanes. If they're in the front lane, they will deal more damage with melee attacks, but they'll also take more damage. And if they're in the back lane, it's like the inverse. They'll take less damage, but they won't deal as much.
Oh, I see.
And that also played into the combat in a really interesting way. I guess I'll just kind of walk through like an example just to
Uh-huh.
like paint a picture. So for instance, I, stunned a group of enemies, went into combat. Two of my melee weapons were weaknesses to the enemies that were in front of me. So basically, with how my team was ordered, I was able to do one weakness attack and then a second weakness attack. And basically, that meant that I had like three more turn actions that I could do. So my third character, she has this ability that is able to basically draw aggro. So it's like any enemies will only attack me for one turn.
Sure.
So basically, what I could then set up was I could have her go into the back lane. I could have her cast that, and then I would still have my turn action so that I could attack again. And then whenever it was her turn for the last turn action, I could hit guard. So
Oh, I
now
see.
she's pretty much fully protected. She'll still take a little bit of damage from attacks,
Right.
but all of my guys that like are weaker to the enemies, they're scot-free while she takes all the damage, and then I can reset that again for the next turn.
Hmm.
So there's some really interesting kind of dynamics at play with the combat, just like Persona, that make it a bit more engaging than
Than just a
something like a
regular turn.
Pokemon.
Yeah, regular turn based. Yeah.
Where like I feel like when I play Pokemon, like it's just kind of basic and just like, trades like here and there. It's just like, okay, you're weak to this attack. Like I'll just spam that until you're done, right?
That's the strategy,
Whereas
Nick.
exactly. Whereas when I played Persona and when I'm playing this, like I am stopping and thinking at certain times when I'm like, caught with like a tough situation. It's like, okay, how am I gonna dig myself out of this? Or I'm met with like the awesome feeling of just going in, wiping the floor, and getting all these like bonuses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as is to be expected with this team now, after I'd played Persona 5 and just seeing some of their other games, the presentation and the animation is like insane. Very flashy menus, very flashy visual effects. the like transitions into battle and stuff are just so cool. Not
The
to
menus
mention
sort
the
of
like,
remind me of Persona. I feel like they still have some of that Persona flair.
yeah, this one is definitely more like, it's like paint is what like the main theme is of a lot of the visual like UI elements. Like Persona kind of has that, but it felt more like, comic booky, like pop art when I played
Sure.
Persona 5. This is definitely more like brush strokes, like the skybox just looks like hand painted, which
Mm.
is like a really cool look. Um but yeah, just visually speaking, it's awesome. The music was really weird at first to me, but it's since really grown on me. It's like a very epic fantasy, but then it also just has like this guy chanting during the battle where it's just like like it sounds really weird the first couple times, but then it's just like, oh shit, this is pretty hype like when you get into the fight. So I really like that. Um, and is there anything else that I really wanted to talk about? Uh, oh, yes. So maybe to be expected by people that have played Persona. If you haven't, uh, the game has a very lengthy opening where you're not really doing a whole lot.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
it's it's a lot of dialogue. Persona 5 obviously was like filled with dialogue. It's a lot of talking. So
That's
if
all
that
actually.
kind of puts you
That's another
off,
thing I remember from whatever Persona I played. I think it was Persona 3 Golden or something. Is that one of them?
4 Golden was
4
the Vita
Golden? What's
one.
the third one? Royale? No, is it 5
Um,
Royale? Whatever that one is.
yes, 5 is Royal.
But either way, I also remember lengthy dialogue sequences, just a lot of dialogue.
hmm And they like, it's a new IP. They have to set things up, but yeah,
Sure.
it definitely takes its time to get going with the game. Like the first night that I played it, like I barely did any combat, and I played for like an hour and a half. So it was yes, it's definitely a very lengthy cutscene kind of heavy opening, but at the same time, the cutscenes kind of like Persona are anime style. They're really high quality, really nice like vocal performances and stuff. So
Hmm.
it's definitely seems like it's going to be another heavy hitting RPG from the studio, and it's got me interested in it. For me personally, I really like the heist kind of genre, and so things about Persona 5 that are more directly messing with those kind of themes, I found myself like it really got its hooks into me. I wasn't expecting to
Right.
like that game as much as I did.
Yeah. I mean, you kind
And
of had to go through 100 something hours into it.
exactly. Metaphor, the gameplay, I'm really liking a lot of the changes from Persona that the game is playing with, but I'm not quite as big of a fan of the overall theme. That's not to say it's not like it's, bad or anything. Like I think it's really cool and it's definitely unique. Um it's just it's not quite my cup of tea, so it's like I don't think I'm going to like rush out and play this game, but
Sure.
it's definitely an interesting game, and I I think the hype that is surrounding it is probably, well justified. It seems like it's going to be a pretty sweet game.
Hell yeah. Look, those are some of those games. Unless you know, God forbid, all right. Somehow it ends up winning a retrograde. I don't. It's one of those games I don't know if I'll make my way to because they're just so extensive and
Hmm
and it's I think it's one of those things where I personally like for a lot of the time I'm not a big fan of turn-based combat, which is crazy because
hmm
I do like Pokemon. I actually think that like something like what the hell oh my god, Sea of Stars, Sea of Stars and Echo Generation, like they actually have slowly turned me towards turn-based combat, but on a regular, I think they're Persona was too technical, too much for me, and then but I found the story really interesting though, so it's like I
hmm
guess a similar Dragon Age situation where I find the writing and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is kind of sick, and then you have to play the game. I'm like, okay, I didn't know I had to play the game. So, but yeah,
Yeah, Sri, I think I think the demo is like perfect for you, right?
you get
Like
a
if you
taste.
don't want to commit, but you want to try to get like a good taste of the game and like, a non-insignificant amount, like again, 7 hours, like, there's
Right. Yeah.
been full games that are less time that I've played this year, right?
Modern Warfare
So
3,
it's
I heard.
like, yeah, so I would say like if you find the time and any of this is like interesting to you or like you see, some of the gameplay that you were showing and you're like, maybe I'll give it a try. The demo, I mean, can't beat free.
That's true. That's true. Well, Nick, I don't know if do you want to take a break from talking and then we'll both tackle Shattered Space, or do you want to jump right into
Yeah,
it? Are you
let's both tackle Shattered Space.
so okay? So before we get to Shattered Space, then okay, let's give Nick some time to drink some water. After Metaphor Refantasio. Now, I don't even know what episode it was, but I think the best way to start talking about this is actually going to sound, it's going to come out of left field. So last year, I published a novella called The Lesser Evil, and it was about this detective that was pursuing a case that kind of comes to her door in a cyberpunk city. And the reason why I mentioned that at the top of this discussion is because that'll hopefully give you an understanding of why I was so excited about Shadows of Doubt. Is essentially, all right, and I've put about 5-6 hours into this game, and it's one of those games where that is kind of just scratching the surface. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot more there to be experienced, but I want to give you a general idea of what Shadows of Doubt is, because essentially it's it's a first person detective sim. I don't want to say a detective life sim because I don't think that's really what they're going for, but it does have a lot of life sim aspects. Now, the way the experience that I had kind of going into it, right, was you start up the game and they have a tutorial case, or like a case that they've handcrafted a little bit that you can follow all the way through, and it gives you an idea of like, okay, these are the options that I can that I have at any given point at my disposal. Now, how do I? So this mission, this case, starts. You wake up in your apartment, and to pick your character. Actually, I have to. Nick, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go back. So, like I said, it's a detective sim. So you make a character, name him whatever you want, and kind of, you don't really get to see your character. It's mostly just for like the context. But then you get to pick where what city the game takes place in. And there's 3 options for locations, right? So there's one that was available during early access, and then now that the game's officially out in 1.0, which is how I'm playing it, it's in 1.0 on PC, and then it also has a Xbox Series XS and a PS5 release, and I've been playing on the PS5. And with the kind of official launch of the game, they've added the 2 other maps, but these are handcrafted maps that are sort of like a few city blocks. And even the setup for the game is kind of interesting because it's not quite cyberpunk, but it's essentially a future where, mega corporations have like a mega corporation is essentially like elected to lead the United Atlantic States or something like that. I forget what the exact name is. And because of global warming and stuff, cities have essentially become like highly populated islands. So it's kind of written into the story about why the city is so small. It's contained within this particular like a few blocks because there's water all around it. Like this is all that's this is all that's like above ground essentially. But with that setup, right? You go in, you pick what city you want, and I've played in 2 of the cities so far, and you wake up in your apartment, and the case again, the default case starts off. You get a note slipped under your door, and dude, I mean, it starts with a case. Like you get a slip that has a name on it, and everything else in the city, other than the design, if you go for the, a city that's handcrafted, is kind of procedurally generated. So it's, random names, right? So you find a note and it's some random name. And so what do you do, Nick, when you get a random name and you have to figure out who it is? You go to the address book. So you go to the address book, find the go to the alphabetical place and find the name, find their address, and then you can go to their house. Now, when you or the apartment. Now, when you get to the apartment, you can do a number of different things to get in. You can just break down the door with full force. Obviously, that will cause a commotion. People will see. You can move the mat out of the way. Maybe hope that there's a key under the door. You can have lockpicks and lockpick the key. But there's cameras, so you can have to think about that. You can go and turn off a breaker to get the lights off. But so I happen to be that again, and at least in the first case, it's kind of written into the thing where you move the mat out of the way and there's the key. So you enter and you can look around. And as you're looking around, you have a few tools that you can have a fingerprint scanner that you can kind of use to scan for fingerprints. And when you scan a fingerprint, it if it's someone it'll add them into hey, these are the fingerprints on a file for this person. If they don't, it just says set B. So if you go to a crime scene, it'll just say set B found of prints. And then later on, if whenever you go and find another pair that matches that, it'll say set B again. And you're like, oh, these are the same people. This is the same person. Anyway, it's and there's while you're kind of going through this, there's a case board that you kind of build out. And these are, every kind of thing you collect, every fact you find will come up as a pop-up on your case board. And what you can do is you can, sift through okay, this is just a random address. I don't need to, save it. I don't need to remember it. Or you can be like, oh no, this is pertinent to the case at hand. You can, highlight it, and then you can put red dots and connect it to make a murder board. And dude, so okay, I go into this apartment. I'm waiting, or I'm looking around. I find a body, and as I'm looking around, okay, well, it's scanning for fingerprints. I accidentally trigger an alarm system because I snooped around in the wrong way. I was being a little reckless, and so I was like, oh shit, there's someone. Again, this isn't scripted to be this way. Right, so it's kind of the way the adventure played out for me, I guess. But I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. So I went to the bathroom, and there's a vent in the bathroom. So I crawled into the vent, and I kind of followed it up to the first place, and it went upstairs, and I got out into the bathroom of the upstairs neighbor. Essentially, weaseled my way out, lockpicked the door, and without them knowing that someone was in their house, I left. And then I'm on the floor above, and I'm looking down, and I can see cops approaching the door downstairs of where I was. And then they're slowly open the door, and then okay, we're coming in, and so they break down the door or whatever. And then later on, for another reason, I come back to that place after a few minutes, and the apartment has crime scene stickers, tape on it, so you can't go in. And this is just a flavor, a little kind of slice of what you can do in this game. You can really, again, it's not a life sim, so you're not there to be oh, I'm just a detective. I'm sure you can, if you, to a certain degree, you can just monologue to yourself. But it has this such an interesting, okay, if there's something you have, an idea that you have, and how you think you can solve this case, right? Because you find a random address. You can go to that address, pursue that person, and ask them hey, do you know this person? Or you can ask them a certain number of kind of questions based on certain parameters. You can give them an item and say do you know this item, etc. You can also just say I'm charging you with fucking a crime, and and arrest them if you'd like. Obviously, you can't. It'd be unwise to do it for every person you see, but man, it's such an interesting game, and the fact that it's indie, it's very small, but the way they've made this game, the way they've built it, is just I feel it's made for me in terms of I love these kind of things. That's really why I started the story at the start to talk about why I love detective novels, and this almost feels like you're the star of your own little detective story, and the freedom of play here is awesome. But on top of everything I just said, Nick, you can also go in at the start before you load into the map. You can procedurally generate maps, so you can have endless maps. And if you like a seed, you
Oh,
can
wow.
essentially plant it out. Like copy a seed and share it with your friends in the community, and they can also go there. But the it's procedurally this is like the best case for me of procedural generation. I can't say that fast because the core mechanics are all built pretty solidly. The game has a few issues on PlayStation 5. Like certain mechanics and stuff are a little bit broken, but I think with some patches they can be fixed. Like I can see where, through the little bit of like the grime, I can see through the polish there to where it could be. But for me, most of those like are ignorable. And so you have this really cool procedurally generated game that kind of is a puzzle that you can kind of solve every time you want to load in. So highly recommend Shadows of Doubt. I knew this was going to be interesting. I knew this was going to be a game that I was going to enjoy, but it's one of those games now I'm like, okay, I'm actually happy that it lived up to the hype.
I have one thing that I want to ask about with this.
Okay.
Obviously, from what you've heard, or from what you've just said, and from what I've heard from other people, the game is definitely very interesting.
Yeah.
And how dynamic it is. Is there room for hijinks to appear, or is it more of like a grounded kind of,
Dude, I mean,
you're kind of RPing a grizzled detective and you don't really want to do goofy stuff, or is there like room for both?
No, I think so. I played it initially like on stream just to show my first impressions, and then off stream I started another save to kind of do my more grounded, like gritty role play. But that sounded a little weird now. But like on stream there was a point where I had snuck into this apartment because I was getting away from someone, and look, there are some dumb shit that I've gotten into with like. I'll be like, oh, this room's clear, and I'll start doing something. And I'm like, oh, someone's looking at me. I turn around, and like, there's a guy that's like, what are you doing here? But there's one time where, so okay, I don't know if this was on the stream or not, but so I go into this place to hide, and when I get in there, or sorry, I go into this apartment at the top, and I'm hiding. And I'm like, okay, I think the steam has blown off a little bit. I can leave. And as soon as I open the door, I lockpick the door, and I open the door from the inside to leave. I see the owner of the house coming in up the stairs. I'm like, shit. So I go back into the house and close the door, and I just go into the closet, and I'm just waiting for this woman to go somewhere that's in convenient. So I was hiding. Yeah, this is on stream. I was hiding under the bed, and I was just like, oh man, I hope she doesn't come in here while I'm down here. So yeah, there's certainly room for like, you to goof around, but you can also take it seriously and like look for the clues and piece together things and feel uber smart, but you can also feel dumb.
That's what I'm curious about when the game is procedurally generating these like dynamic moments and stuff. It's like, was it really just down to coincidence and time that the owner of the house was coming, or was something in the game communicating like he's going for the door, so send them up in, like
whatever it is.
So
I mean, it's well written, like that implementation feels kind of natural, at least in the moment I had. And just to kind of put a pin on it, because like I said, this game has been in early access for a while, but now it's going into 1.0. So with the console releases, the game has a new case type. So there's now kidnappings that can happen in the wild. So like the crimes are procedurally generated too, in terms of like you're not just getting one crime, right? Like so you can stay in the same city and multiple crimes will happen. You can kind of like go from one to the other. But there's cover-ups, so a new feature where the killer may contact you to dispose of key evidence in exchange for cash. There's also laboratories where you can expand your investigation to laboratories, which are new explorable spaces that appear throughout buildings, and they feature new items and furniture that can be used to decorate your home. There's also new pre-generated cities, so which is what I was talking about. There's one that was kind of one that was a default with the game prior to release, but now there's also Casablanca Quarter and New Lily Croft, both of which I have played. And perhaps the best feature, Nick, Umbrella. You can now become fully immersed in the role of a private detective in a rainy neo-noir world with a brand new clothing accessory, the umbrella. If that hasn't sold you on it, I mean, I don't think I can do any better job.
The coolest detectives don't use umbrellas, though. They just walk around
They
with a
just
wet
walk.
coat all the time.
Yep. Maybe with a fedora, or not a fedora, but I don't know what those hats are called, but yeah.
I was also going to ask about progression, but you kind of answered it there. So are you just getting money from cases for like decorating and, doing cosmetic stuff for your
Yep.
character and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nothing. Yeah. I don't think I've made enough of a dent in the game to really feel like an economic burden to like have to invest in anything, if that is a kind of the way the game works. But yeah.
I guess also, is there a narrative? Like, are you doing a set number of cases towards an end, or is this just kind of like a,
You're just in it.
play until you've had your fill?
Yeah, no, you're just in it for however
Gotcha.
long you want to, play around in that playground.
Nice. Yeah, it definitely sounds really interesting, and it's been on my radar for a little bit, so might have to give it a try at some point.
One of the things that I think is really impressive about the game we just talked about is how the certain narrative moments. So how do I say this? One of the most impressive things about Shadows of Doubt is that the restrictions with gameplay, like I was saying, like the city size and stuff, are written into the game's lore. So it makes sense within the context of what you're playing. That that you can only explore a certain bit. That same compliment, Nick, carries over to Starfield, a game that I think, in many ways, including in the new Shattered Space DLC, writes itself into really interesting corners. That, for example, this is a thought I've had since the game came out, and we didn't have the podcast back when Starfield came out, so this is my time to talk about it. But I think the end of Starfield is really interesting in terms of they write into the game, the story, the idea of a new game plus. Like, that is so sick to me. And in this DLC, they essentially do a similar thing where the start of this DLC, you just have to go to any star system, and this teleporting space station will catch your attention. And it's brilliant, because then you just go in and then you're off to the DLC no matter where you're going. It's awesome. But honestly, that was just a transition to talk about, and honestly, I think for me at least, Nick, gush about how awesome Shattered Space is, and also just Starfield is in general. But Shattered Space, I'm about 6 hours into it, 5.5, 6 hours into it, and I'm having a really good time, Nick. How about you? What's your runtime on it before we, just general thoughts before we dive into it further?
Yeah, I think I'm roughly about the same amount of time in that you are. I've definitely put a couple sessions in.
It's first impressions for both of us then. So it's not a definitive review, but okay. So first of all, what was your expectations going in, and how do you feel so far going, like, having spent a good half of the game? Because we haven't finished it, but there's some mad lads out there that have kind of blunt force their way through the main quest line, and it's about 10 hours is what it's shaking out to be, if you're not going off the beaten path to doing side quests, which I personally have been. So we'll talk about that, but yeah, hit me with it.
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned it, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. But in a lot of the advertising and the lead up for Shattered Space, they've kind of been throwing around Far Harbor, which was the Fallout 4 expansion. So going into Shattered Space, I was expecting something on, that kind of level of, a new story, new location, new creatures and enemies, kind of the standard Bethesda expansion. So far, I have gotten what I've expected, if maybe a little bit less on, like, specifically like the gear front. Like a lot of the
Sure.
like
Yeah.
gear and weapons that I've been finding are just still stuff that's from the
They're,
base game.
they're also pathetic. I mean, look, some of these guns are like pea shooters, man. Like, give me something that has an
Mhm.
impact.
Right. Uh, so far, I think the DLC, from what I've experienced, is like I'm enjoying it, but I think it's only okay so far
Sure.
as Bethesda expansions go.
And oh yeah, and
Um,
I should emphasize that I have not played any Bethesda expansions, so this is my first one. I don't have the prior context.
Gotcha. Yeah, this will be an interesting conversation then with the two experience levels, I guess. Yeah, I first of all, I'll say the most immediate thing being the atmosphere and the new planet of Varun Kai.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it looks awesome. There are so many like areas and just like the way that the skybox looks, where it
Yeah.
has these
Yes.
weird like red and green auroras, but like the atmosphere is thin, so you can still see the stars behind it, even when it's like daytime on the planet. It's a very interesting looking planet that's completely different from any of the other ones that are in
Plus,
the base game.
plus it has that the citadel that is essentially
Hmm.
like this centerpiece of this whole handcrafted map. So at all time,
It's like their capital city, like their
yeah.
capital building, I
So you
guess.
kind of see it like in the distance, and it's not even just the fact that it is a giant tower, but there's a a gravitational anomaly surrounding it that's like a bubble that
Hmm.
yeah, just kind of is glowing.
It's something that I think a lot of open world games are starting to take notice to. It's just I've noticed it in a
Would you
lot of
call
stuff
it the Breath of the
recently.
Wild effect?
Maybe, but like Breath of the Wild, like certainly Tears of the Kingdom has it, where the castle is like floating in the map and you can kind of see it from anywhere. I brought up what were we talking about? With Ghost of Yotei.
Oh, sure, the
The how the
mountain.
mountain, and I compared it to the Erd Tree in
Sure.
Elden Ring. It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of open world games are like, make something very dynamic and interesting and make it visible from basically anywhere on the
Right.
map.
Yeah.
It's just one of those weird things that, I noticed. But yeah, I think the city of Dazra, which is like the capital of the House Varun, I think it's a very interesting place to explore. I haven't really done a whole lot there yet, admittedly. Kind of what, if we wheel it back a little bit here. So, like you mentioned, you come across this space station that's, warping across the galaxy. Um, you get involved in some stuff there, see things aren't what they seem. And eventually once you regain control and repower up the station, you are warped to Varun Kai, which until this point, the homeworld of House Varun was not, locatable in the base game. And there was, like you said, lore reasons for that. Basically, anybody that's sent away from there doesn't have the coordinates to get home. So nobody really knows outside of a select few people, I suppose. Um, but basically, you're at this new world, and then they've had this event with these gravitational anomalies, and they're trying to figure out what happened and figure out why people are appearing like, very ghostly, why they're hostile, and why their capital city is, or like why their capital building is stuck
The
in
scaled
this
citadel. Is that what it's
gravitational
called?
dominated. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's about my limit on the story so far, because I kind of got like introduced to things, and ever since then I've just kind of been going out and exploring the landscape on my own, kind of getting
Oh,
into
okay.
random things. So I'm not sure if you're farther than me in the story,
I've
but I
so
I haven't done much story.
so the to kind of to for push what you said a little bit further. Once you get to Varun Kai, you are put into you're tested to join House Varun, and
Hmm.
I think it's like to walk the path of the serpent or something similar to that effect. And after that, you are given the kind of the final objectives, the main objectives, I should say, of the DLC expansion, which is unite the three houses of House of Varun, because there's like sub houses within the house. And so I've completed one of the houses scenarios. And so you're saying you haven't touched any of the specific house chapters?
Yeah, like I'm at the point where like I have to go do them, but yeah, I haven't gone down any one of those paths yet.
Okay, this is interesting. Now, here's the thing. One of the reasons why I've been so intrigued by this game, not like since starting it. Again, I've stayed away from pretty much everything prior to release because I was like, all right, I'm playing it. I don't need to like research it anymore at this point. And so I was just going in, and the first thing is it's very heavily House Varun, and again, we've said this before. I think we're going to say it, and every time we talk about a damn RPG on this podcast, but we play with our characters at the forefront. And for my character, and minor spoilers or spoilers just in general for Starfield, like the ending to the main game, but the way I ended it, I'm not going to get exactly specifics, but the way I ended up like the romantic interest in that storyline was Andreja, who because of the ending I chose, we did like it. Like she's no longer like in this universe. She's no longer a character for me. And so I felt like, oh, this is so interesting going back to this game, and the thing that I have to do is find out more about the culture of the character that I've lost, and so I was like, that's interesting. And I also think that the whole like the starting bit, mainly like up until the point where you're finished with the test at House Varun and you become a Vindicator, which again sounds like an Arnold movie from the 80s. Yeah, the Vindicator. But it reminded me of like a Far Cry. I mean, especially because I was playing in first person, but it felt like a Far Cry sequence. Like when in Far Cry 3 and 4, like they have like these weird drug trips and like you go into caves and you come out a different person. That whole experience was very reminiscent. And to me, that's not a bad thing because I'm also a sucker for Far Cry. But after that, though, and I'm going to be limiting what I'm going to say fully because of what like Nick hasn't played everything I have experienced. I think there is. So again, I've done one of the houses. There is an enemy type in one of those in one of the missions. I find him fucking terrifying. This thing, holy shit, dude. When you come, I mean, look, I don't want to overhype it because then I don't want you to get there and be like, this guy kind of sucks. But I've so far only seen two of them, but fuck every single both those times, pain in the goddamn ass is good. It was intense though. It was intense.
Were they redeemed?
Yes,
because I have come across a couple of them.
Yeah, it was redeemers. Fuck the redeemers. I didn't know you could. They were just in the overworld too. But I the first time I ran into them, it's a cave, and I'm like, this is like I like see they. So okay, so if you don't know the redeemers, to kind of briefly, so you can picture it, it's like a Terminator, but it's like a human being, but it's just like a Terminator kind of energy. So as soon as they spot
run at you with melee weapons,
they're just like dunk 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 dunk, just like stomping towards you. It's a lot, and a huge health bar too. But anyway, I thought the Redeemer's really cool, and I also think so far the DLC puts you with pretty interesting like dynamics of like how you could solve a certain situation. Like, you go into a mission, you're like, okay, you think, okay, this is the way to solve this mission, and then someone will be like, actually, can I talk to you real fast? And then it's like, oh yeah, actually, just a twist to what you're saying. You could do this, but you could also do this. And so like I like the kind of choice. I'm still playing to my character, but it's interesting to have it play with. And now along with that, part of the reason why I also feel so strongly about this DLC is it reminds me of how much I like the base game Starfield. I actually don't remember the facial animations being this good, but damn, the facial animations are like at times too much, because like they're really using their eyebrows when they talk, some of these characters. So it's like they're overemphasizing sometimes, but still, like the facial animation, the lip sync, I'm like staring at lips and coming off. I know it's a bad comparison. The game's like 15 years old, but coming off of Dragon Age Origins, where I'm like trying to like read the subtitles instead of looking at their face because it's so bad. Here I'm like, oh, I can stare at your lips, and I'm like, it's like you're speaking the words. So it was awesome to do that. And also Nick, let me just fucking keep going. The persuasion checks I think are really fucking good in this game. I love the way that persuasion checks are done in this game. It has a just enough risk reward to actually like, because before, most of the times it really is as simple as, a persuasion check. If you are up to this certain level, you can get by that specific dialogue. Here, when you choose to persuade someone, you're given a certain amount of opportunities to convince them, and you have several different dialogue options that are essentially, if succeeded, will fill a certain bar that will allow you to convince that person. If that's not too complicated of a way to explain it, but I love
harder checks will fill up more of the bar.
Yes, and also higher chance to like fail the encounter. But so all those things combined, plus the fact that I don't have to space travel all over the place, is awesome. And so like just being on this one place and being able to just walk out and explore is just kind of like a very, very easy part. And also photo mode still kicks. Love me the photo mode.
Yeah, the exploration, I think, is something that's been very interesting so far, just in how you're actually exploring. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I'm fast traveling very little. I'm just using
I haven't fast traveled at all.
The vehicle. Yeah. Which is
Nick,
very different to the base
I know you
game.
reminded me, but I forgot to buy a vehicle before I made it to House Varun, and I'm like, it's too late. I'm already committed, so I've just been running around everywhere.
Well, exploring with the vehicle has been pretty fun. So if you want to take a break and go buy it, like, I don't know, unless you're having fun just running around and jump packing.
I do that. Look, there's very few things in Starfield that are as satisfying as like testing how far you can make your jetpack take you. Like jumping off a cliff and then just being like, let's see how many times I can boost to not touch the ground. Flora's Lava is really fun in this game.
The right at the start of the DLC, so I like started it and got down to Varun Kai, and then I was like, you know what? There's some other stuff that I want to go do real quick before I like get into the DLC.
Right.
And one of those was something that I wanted to do when the base game came out, but I never ended up doing it. Give me 1 sec. I need to pull up.
Was it a bug trophy?
No. I wanted to make a custom ship.
Sure.
I want to shout out Chatsubo Dude on YouTube.
Shout out
I used Dude. a guide to make Spike's swordfish ship from Cowboy Bebop,
nice.
The red ship.
Yeah.
I was like, I've ever since getting the game originally, it's like I wanted to have this ship to fly around, and I think he made a really nice one.
Yeah.
So I followed along with that guide, and I had to go and do a couple things to get like an extra perk that I needed for it. But after I built my ship, so now I have this nice fancy new ship. Then I came back and I've just been doing the DLC. I think story-wise, it's interesting with House Varun because we don't have like a whole lot of backstory or like as well developed backstory compared to like United Colonies or Freestar Rangers and stuff. But like for my personal tastes, House Varun's not really my favorite faction. So just like already going into this, it's like I'm only going to be like interested to a certain level.
I was pretty surprised that you had to fully. I don't know if this is like this in like the other Fallout DLCs and stuff, but like you had to commit to becoming, you have to join House Varun. I thought that was like a little crazy because. Again, I was like, I justified it within my character, but like, I don't know, it feels like a little weird. Is that how it normally is? Like you have to join a specific faction and stuff, or
not usually? Okay. That is kind of a unique thing to this. Yeah. Outside of that, because like I said, I've just been kind of doing like there was one side quest that I did enjoy where you are trying to search for somebody's lost relative, and it definitely leans into like a, horror kind of theme in the
Oh,
area that you're in. They do lots of little things like, you walk into a room and a gas valve explodes in front of your face,
I
or
have
you
jumped
know
at least once or twice in the DLC so far.
mm, yeah, I think it's interesting because you have these moments that play out during missions that feel like they're from like other games and stuff almost in a way.
Yeah.
They even had this in the base game with, like, if you remember the one mission where it's kind of doing like a Titanfall thing where it's switching between
Oh, sure.
realities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um it's just I've picked up on some of that in the DLC also, which is cool to see. But the one thing that I did want to say is that maybe even more so with the DLC compared to the base game. Um, and I know this is something that the developers were talking about prior to releasing Shattered Space is, this is a lot of setup, but I also play a lot of Fallout 76, obviously. And going from 76 to Starfield, I'm just like constantly reminded about like how much more fun I find Starfield's combat to be than
Yeah,
76.
yeah.
Like, I love Fallout. I love the aesthetic and the world. I think it's, amazing, right? But just like, I was playing Starfield earlier today and I got into a combat situation with some zealots, and it's just like Todd Howard says, and people might make fun of me for that, but like the music started kicking in.
Yep.
I was reminded about how like awesome the soundtrack is in Starfield, and
Yep.
like how like adventurous it can get. And it was just like I was flying into action, popping off like special powers, using my jump pack and flying around enemies, switching weapons out constantly. And I'm like, man, I'm having a lot of fun, even though it's maybe not like the hardest combat system in the world, right? Like, I don't think it's like super in depth or anything,
Yeah.
but I was just like having so much fun, like with like this bombastic brass music playing while I'm, activating slow-mo, headshotting like two guys, and then switching to my machine gun and
Yeah.
flying over. And like it was just like, man, I'm having a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a bit weird for me. It's like I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm still enjoying it, and I'm obviously going to be getting, all the achievements and everything because I have to have 100% for this
Of
game.
course. Of course.
But there are parts of it where I'm just like, okay, like, the story I'm not like super gripped by yet. Like, it has some interesting setups, but like the faction just as a whole isn't really my favorite. And then like some of the side quests I've been doing are just kind of okay. They're not like super interesting. There's like some interesting choices that you can make on some of them, but just like kind of the setup, I'm just like I got a miscellaneous quest that's just to play hide and seek with some kids in the city, and it's like that kind of stuff. It's just like, okay, like I don't know.
Yeah. I think for me the story has not been like incredible as you were saying. It's not the main
Hmm.
draw. I think um like I said at the start, it's mainly the fact that I'm going back to Starfield and realizing that all the things that I enjoyed about the game, that I remember enjoying about the game, that I still enjoy.
Hmm.
Technically, um, I don't think when I was playing it, I even had the option to like have a targeted frame rate. But now I'm playing at 60; it's a little bit smoother. At least it feels a little bit smoother.
Hmm.
I don't know what sacrifices I'm making in resolution for that, but I don't mind. Smoothness, I think, is the priority for me. But I have had 3 crashes so far, and
Mm.
all 3 of them, two of them mainly, I think, had me replay at least a little bit. I'm like, god damn it, Starfield,
Yeah.
you're the same thing I played last year. But
I have one thing that I do need to ask you,
sure,
because obviously both you and I have been sharing some screenshots online,
yeah,
and you were hinting at that in your current character's predicament, you have gone through the end game,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
My character has not. I'm still in the pre that final mission
sure.
state. Has the DLC made any interesting comments on that to you, or not yet? Because I know that there are
Yes,
certain things like in the base
there
game when you go
are
through that it changes.
there is at least like like one dialogue I can remember specifically that is from because I'm a a son of a bitch, an SB, that like I could say a certain dialogue. So yeah, you do have that kind of context for me for that character going in, and also like I mentioned like Andrasia, like you can actually quote Andrasia at some point too. I don't know if you've had that too. You
See, that's another interesting thing with my game specifically because, like you, I was going for that romance option, but unlike you, or I believe unlike you, in kind of the halfway mark where a big kind of story thing happens,
yes.
that happened to
Yes,
Andraja in my
yeah,
game. And
yeah.
so like
I remember this.
yeah,
Yeah,
she's not able to come. Let's just say it like that.
yeah. No, and that's part of the fun. I mean, like that's one of the reasons why playing through, even though I didn't stream anything for the original Starfield. I was recovering from a torn ACL. I was recovering from a surgery for a torn ACL. But yeah, like talking to Nick and like I went back and read my Starfield diary, and so like that experience is also like one of the reasons why I love I think Bethesda games in general. But dude, I'm here for it, man. Also, last kind of really weird auxiliary thing. At this point, I think my brain's being reprogrammed, Nick, and so I'm drawing conclusions to the same thing. It seems, but there's mainly like the Redeemer had a lot of that kind of energy, but it kind of feels like Warhammer, where there's like certain like things where I'm like because like the Redeemers, like if you listen to what they're saying, they're just like they're just saying violent shit, and it kind of feels like chaos energy, like just like the way like Chaos Marines and stuff just like blood and gore for like the skulls for the skull throne, like shit like that. And I'm like, that's I can see the energy here, but maybe that's just I'm being reprogrammed by Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, the one last thing that I wanted to say also with because it pertains to a Redeemer. I have so whenever the creations thing
Oh yes, yeah.
came into the game, if you were a deluxe edition owner, you got like extra points.
I got
to be able to get
1,000
stuff
waiting for me.
Back when those first came out, I got I got the free like story kind of bounty hunter mission, and then there was like a paid one that I used my credits on. And in that second paid one, you get this particle beam sniper rifle. And I was using that, and there was a Redeemer up on like a tower that I came across. And I was like, all right, I'll just see, take some pot shots real quick. This sniper is so powerful. Like I hit him like 2 or 3 times, and it was one of those ones that had like 4 health bars of like, health. And he was already into his last one, and I was
Dang.
like, okay, I gotta switch to something else just so I like don't completely wipe the floor with this guy.
Dude,
like,
I'm unloading entire shotgun like magazines into this guy, and he's not falling. But what an absolute tank. Also, I mean, look, it seems that this turned into a Starfield episode. Maybe I should have renamed it. But so like in my notebook where I kind of write down my notes on stuff for games, I still have my notes from the like Starfield originally, and so I went back just kind of like just to see what I had, and there's one point where it just says spent 2 hours in Neon. That's my note, guys. So yeah, hope you guys appreciate the fact that I spent 2 hours in Neon. Oh, I also have the fact that Astral Lounge Penthouse is $235K. So, and I did afford it. Not that I could tell because now I don't have access to it anymore.
Yeah, the other thing, I made the point about the combat versus like Fallout 76. Also, just like the visual improvements of Starfield, like it's like night and day. And like even Starfield compared to like other, like there are some other games that obviously will still look a little bit nicer.
I
but
actually
just like
think
comparing it
it's
to
close
their
like,
older games, it's so good.
I think it's not quite as good looking, but I actually think that it reminds me a lot visually of Cyberpunk 2077. I think it has a lot of there's
Mhm.
and I think some people could say, oh, it's like a little bit, it's a little bit sterile in that kind of way, but I think that it has this polish to the visuals. And yeah, like there's some times where I'm just like, I'm playing this shit like I'm playing for the demo on E3. You know what I mean? I'm like taking it
Mhm.
slow, panning up and down, tilting left and right. Yeah.
It's
Wait,
like
is that
Fallout
right?
4 and
Panning
76,
left and
like, they
right and
have
tilting
their
up and down.
moments. They have their nice looking moments, but, like, specifically, like, lighting in those
Yes.
games, I don't think
Yeah.
is very good, and Starfield, it
Yeah.
is, like, dramatically
Really
better.
strong. It's like yeah, like the lighting and the I think architecture as well. Like again, you have
Mhm.
more to play with when you're doing a sci-fi setting than even I think Elder Scroll, like for the Bethesda properties, I think that the hierarchy, Fallout is actually at the bottom because is kind of a pre-established like what this should look like, because it's based off of
Mhm.
like an existing thing. Skyrim is I think next because it's like you know a little, it's fantasy, so there's established norms, but they can kind of play around with it.
Mhm.
Starfield, I think they do have a similar kind of restriction in terms of like, okay, it's also based on certain analog technology and stuff, but
Mhm.
I think it ultimately, because it is that sci-fi, you can stretch it a little bit more and get more out of it. But yeah, I honestly, I think if anything, the you know what, I'll save it for the main review. All right, let's once we next week, guys, come back next week. I should be finished with this DLC, and we can talk about it then. So find out next time what I have to say.
So, yeah, first impressions looking pretty good. We'll see how it shapes up in the end.
Yeah, hopefully it lands. Now that is probably the lengthiest what we've been playing we've had in quite a few weeks.
It makes up for the last couple when we
It
didn't have
does. It
much.
does. So, in hello loading, you came in the middle of a discussion, but hello, welcome. Now, Nick, let's jump into some news stuff before we get into a little bit of a branch. It's something that I think we've both been interested to talk about for a while now.
Yeah. So, I want to start with a very personal one and just like an overall smaller one here.
Sure.
Um, I've mentioned Tony Hawk the last couple weeks. Some stuff's been popping up with that, and
Granddad Tony Hawk, right?
yeah, skate legend Mr. Hawk. Um, Basically, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that anytime there's anything new with a Tony Hawk video game, it just comes from Tony Hawk's mouth these days. And he was talking a little bit like cagily about seeing, or like talking with Activision. He made a post on the anniversary of Pro Skater, and at the end of this post, it basically says, "I'm not supposed to tease anything else about the future of the series, but there will be a future." So basically, he was told quit talking about it, and then he still just talked about it anyway.
I will
um,
right after this.
it's not a lot to work on, but again, just like any confirmation that we're getting more Tony Hawk is a cause for me to be happy. So
Yeah, fair. And shout out to Tony
um
Hawk for being a granddad. I'm
yeah,
fairly certain.
we'll see how what that materializes into, but
Yeah, yeah.
I it's just good to have another quick confirmation on that.
There is something happening.
Yes. um let's talk about here. I want to pick up. Oh, wait, but that also kind of plays into our theme. Let's talk about the first one here then.
Okay.
Devolver Digital, uh, one of my beloved game publishers. I don't know about you, Sri, but
I
I
respect
am
them,
known
but
to love me a
I
Devolver.
yeah, I respect their like lineup, and I love their sense of humor. I just haven't played a lot of Developer Digital games, so I don't have maybe
Hmm.
quite the fondness that you do. But I think they're like very very important part of the current publishing state.
Yeah, they popped up in the news this week because they're launching a new label, which I
Yeah, they
found very
announced it like
interesting.
they teased it like a day or two before, and I was like, oh, I wonder what, like, if it's like a game announcement. But no, it's a whole new label that's called Big Fan Games.
Hmm. And kind of what this Big Fan Games label is going to consist of are indie developers creating indie games based on that are like adaptations of like film and TV properties.
Yes.
Um, in the initial like kind of like tweets or like announcement of this, they named games like John Wick Hex and Reigns Game of Thrones as kind of like, the level that they're at. They didn't mention it by name, but they've also shown the Hellboy game that came
Oh
out
yeah, sure.
recently. So that's kind of like the, I guess, like quality bar, or maybe like the
Scale.
type of, yes, scale. That's a good word for it. The type of scale of these
Hmm.
experiences. And I don't know about you, Sri, but I am very intrigued by this and very interested by this.
Yes, I think this is a brilliant idea. I think this is like, I think a lot of times when you're having an adaptation, it's always the behemoths, like the big fish
Mhm,
get it. And personally, like John Wick Hex is not for me, and I haven't even heard of Reigns Game of Thrones.
mhm,
But the idea of like, a big movie franchise being able to go to a smaller developer who has a very strong style would be awesome. And look, since we're throwing things out there, I'll just say like a hypothetical, right, that I think would be like a possibility, which is John Wick meets like a Hotline Miami. There's literal, I don't know if have you seen John Wick Chapter 4, Nick?
mhm,
There's a shot that feels like it is out of Hotline Miami, and to witness that, but just like keep it rolling, keep the shot going. I mean, that's
mhm.
it's I feel like it's a match made in heaven, and so I'm curious to see what kind of things that come from this, or if this is just like a hey, like we're opening our doors to this, or if they already have a lineup that is like okay, we'll see it at the next Devolver Digital Summer Game Fest extravaganza plus Disney plus
Mhm.
Hulu integration or whatever. But
Yeah, not sure when they'll be ready. They did say that they do have projects in the works already. So, there is at least like,
a game or two,
work
sure,
happening on
yeah,
these. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting to spin it off into its own label, because when I do think of Devolver, I do think of like, kind of fresh, innovative indie stuff. So I think it's the right call to like
yeah.
have it be like a spin-off if we're going to be doing adaptations of like known properties and stuff.
It's funny
But
because I think a
yeah.
lot of studios, like a lot of publishing houses, have like indie house like they have publishing umbrellas that are only for indie games because they're like we're too big. Like Focus, right? I think Focus is an example. Like they have a Focus indie stuff that just to have the indie stuff, so that you're not looking at
Mhm.
Focus and being like, whoa, it must be a big game. But it's like Devolver's like the opposite. It's like, no, we're small. We don't want to be confused for the big leagues, so we'll have another one
Mhm.
that's just for like the cash grabs. Not I mean that in a joking way. I'm not,
Mhm.
but yeah,
But yeah, the mind just races with like
yeah,
what
dude.
what they could do.
I
Like,
mean, look,
initially like my mind went to like some Breaking Bad game or something like in the right developer's hands. I think that'd be awesome.
yeah. I mean, look, Devolver. You feel free to go to our episode on perfect gaming marriages, and be inspired. Go for it. I'm expecting a
Yeah.
Godzilla game. If I don't get a Godzilla game, Nick, I'm a flip. I'm trying to think of who would make who under the Devolver umbrella, or like who in that family
Mhm.
would make a Godzilla game, but
Yeah, I have no idea,
it's
man.
Cult of the Lamb, but you're praying for Godzilla. There's the pitch.
There you go. I mean, just get it started now. Like,
Well,
now I'm thinking, because I played that one game, Card Shark, which was about like conning people. If they like
uh,
those devs do like something sick, like, man, I like this idea. I mean, I like my Devolver games, like I said. So anything they really do, I'm
upcoming
at
show
least
segment.
curious.
We go through every Devolver game that's come out, and we say what could they do that is that is inspired by something else.
Hmm.
So stay tuned, guys. Upcoming
Or
show.
even like Flying Wild Hog, they did the Shadow Warrior stuff with
Yeah,
Devolver. It's like,
yeah.
what if they did John Wick, just like a John Wick
Shadow Warrior
FPS?
is actually,
Like,
yeah. Shadow Warrior kicks ass. Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
this. I mean, does this? How do you want to transition into this next topic? I feel like the next chunk is just kind of the big
Um.
league.
Well, do you want to talk about this first, or do we want to fold that
Sure.
into?
I think we could talk about that
All
first
right.
because yeah, I have a story to tell, I suppose. But yeah,
Yeah. So, for this was for Last of Us Day, right?
uh,
HBO
yeah.
put out a new trailer for Last of Us 2 season 2.
I don't know if it was for Last of Us Day. I thought there was more hype on Last of Us Day. I didn't really see it this year, but they did put out a teaser at the very least. We can confirm they put out a little teaser that shows
Mm-hmm.
off Abby. A first look at Abby. First look at um, Dina. There you go. That's the name. And as well as like some other characters that you see along the way. But man, Nick, what a good trailer! Because and I
Mm-hmm.
have proof of this. I was watching this trailer with someone who's seen the first season of The Last of Us, but has not played the games, and me as someone who's played the first game, played the second game, has watched the show. There's scenes that they cut so perfectly that it elicits two different reactions from the people, like depending on what you are. The
Mm-hmm.
final shot, for example, the person I was with, I was like, "Oh, what would you think of that? What would you garner from that?" And it's like, "Oh, this person's about to be saved." And I was like, "Yeah, that is the start of this. That is the start of that sequence, sure." But things change right pretty
Mm-hmm.
fast. Yeah, it's a really good, and I think also shout out to I believe her name is Isabella Merced. That there's one shot of her. It's Dina, by the way. Isabella Merced plays Dina, and there's one shot where it's Ellie playing the guitar, and you're kind of I think it's like over the shoulder. You're looking at Dina. Her
Mm-hmm.
smile is like fuck, dude. She nailed the character in one smile. I thought it was like spot on. Like because the way that
Mm-hmm.
like Dina feels toward Ellie, that love and like what that kind of builds up into if you play The Last of Us Part Two in the late game and how it's tested. I thought she captured that in one smile for me. I was like, "Fuck, yeah, that's it. That nailed the character." And
Mm-hmm.
also, I think it's also in my head because I just watched Alien Romulus, and I feel the whole time I'm like, "Damn, she looks like Dina." So works out.
Yeah, I've only watched the trailer once, but after seeing the first season, I was like, I'd say I was a fan of the first season. Like, I'm not a huge Last of Us fan in general, but like, I did think
Boom.
that they did a good job with the
The
translation to
yeah, the
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 TV show.
biggest change that they make is like a pretty sizable. Not talking about the episode that
Hmm.
that's a big change canonically. But I'm saying like the world building wise, they change a big thing that I'm and I think you kind of see glimpses of that in this game, but or sorry in this teaser, but that's what I'm
Hmm.
most interested to see how that changes with the story.
What I'm most interested in is just what this season contains because we've heard that this the second game is not just going to be season 2, it's going to be
2 seasons, yeah.
more than that.
Oh, more than yeah,
and
sure.
and they show like a lot of stuff like from like every part of the second game from what I remember like except like maybe the ending part. It's
Well,
like
so
I
yeah, The Last of Us Part Two has at least at the end, it has like an 8 hour sequence. Is that long? It's
I
a
don't know if it's
decent
8 hours,
it's
but
a
it's a
decent chunk
long
that's
chunk.
like you think it's kind of like at an end, and then it's like actually here's another whole section of the game. That I don't
Mhm.
think I've seen. So I don't know if it'd be weird if the entirety of second season is that. There's also the I'm gonna say it because it's very out of context. But like the
Mhm.
burning village stuff, I don't think that was in the teaser. So I don't know if we'll like. I think that will probably be. Oh, you know what it is. You know what it is, Nick. Um, how do I do this? How do I do this? You know what? I'm gonna mute myself for the audience, but I'm gonna say to you, and you react. Okay?
All right.
There you go. What do you think,
Yeah,
Nick?
probably.
Hell yeah.
I would agree with that. Uh, yeah. I think visually speaking, I think they're still doing really good with translating that game.
I think the
It's
production value is only going to go up because HBO's realized that,
mhm.
like, oh shit, people watch this shit. I gotta put more money into it.
It's we're going to be having this conversation for a while, I feel, but it's going to be comparisons with Last of Us and Fallout. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Last of Us is going to be going for the more like translation, but we're going to change a couple things. Fallout has the luxury to do its own thing,
yeah.
but both of them are going to
Shout out
have seen
Fallout hit
massive
100
success.
million
So
stream or like streamers or like viewers.
mhm. So yeah, I'm excited. I'll probably be watching.
I can't wait, Nick, for The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, where you can play as Pedro Pascal. I can't wait for that day. But of course,
I don't know why they didn't do that for part one. What
yeah,
the show was out by then, right?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Because that's why they
that
released the
would be
game. I
such a
think.
cool inclusion.
Yeah, to reskin Joel.
hmm
Hey,
And Ellie. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
either of them.
Hey, Naughty Dog. Again, we're handing out free ideas today. But of course, Nick, that won't come for a few years. The Last of Us Part 2 remastered. That'll come out at least, I'd say, after Death Stranding 2. And that's what we're
On
going
the
to talk
beach.
about. Is that what it's
Yeah.
called?
So yes, Death Stranding 2 on the beach.
No way. Is that the
full
fucking name of the
title.
game?
hmm
What the?
I don't know. I don't know if
What
they've
the
struck the on the beach, but if you go back to the trailer, that's
Dude,
what the title
Dude,
is.
I was looking. Okay. So on the beach is, or sorry, Death Stranding is a thumbnail. Today we're going to talk about celebrities of video games. So I was looking up I was grabbing the press kit for Death Stranding, and I was like, huh. I see Death Stranding. I don't see Death Stranding 2, but I see like Death Stranding on the beach. I wonder if that's like a demo for the game. Oh my god, that's real. Wow. Okay, well, yeah, let's talk about Death Stranding 2 on the beach, which was showcased at TGS, and which is the
got
Tokyo
a
Game
big
Show.
fancy stage show.
Yes,
which is very Kojima.
Where they showed off mainly, among other things, Nick, among pointless garbage about the video game, cool ass jackets. Cool ass expensive jackets that of course immediately sold out after the show.
mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
I have to say, since we're just talking about this show, the fact that they announced this merch drop by showing the in-game characters in photo mode wearing them, dude, what a Hideo Kojima ass way to announce a merch drop. And also, like, awesome photo mode tech. Like, it almost undercuts the fact that the photo mode is like uncannily like good. If you don't know, if you haven't seen the gameplay, or I guess gameplay in Death Stranding 2, when you go into photo mode, the characters will like start reacting like they're real people. So they'll throw stuff at the camera, they'll smile, they'll lean on each other, they'll strike a pose. Like what the hell? Anyway,
it's
oh
like
my God.
weirdly like dynamic. So like you're not like posing people like you do in a lot of other photo modes.
Yeah.
It's not like that rigid. It's just like you're like trying to set up a picture in real life, and like people move and interact with things. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
The jacket thing that you bring up is funny because they have the jackets, and then I know that for a while back, Kojima also partnered with somebody for like specific sunglasses. So soon we'll just be able to get the entire Kojima fit, basically.
Hell yeah, man! That's really the goal. I think that every gamer who's playing it wants. You know, I look. It looks awesome. Like in general, the Death Stranding 2. If you played Death Stranding 1, have you played? I forget. I think you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I played the director's cut. So
so you played longer than me. But I remember the ending for Death Stranding hitting me quite hard. But I also felt like, okay, that was the end of the game. And so I'm curious how it continues. I hope it's not I don't know. Can Hideo Kojima fumble the bag? Yes. I mean, look, I'm sure Death Stranding didn't hit for a lot of people as well. I don't know if it hit for you even, but um,
I think it's a very interesting game, and it played with. It was very. It's gonna sound obvious, but it was a very Kojima game where like
yeah,
it obviously has a lot of the kind of storytelling quirks that a Kojima game brings with it, but also like actually interesting gameplay mechanics and a different type of game than anything else
yeah,
that you'd play. Like, how many other games do you know where like you're trying to contend with how you maneuver across terrain to deliver packages?
right.
Like, sure, there's like things like that since that have come out, and like, kind of like postage themed games have like risen up a little bit, I feel like, in the wake of Death Stranding.
The
But back
USPS
then,
gaming
like,
genre is flourishing thanks to Death Stranding.
pretty much. Yeah, so yeah, there are parts that I like about Death Stranding, there are parts that I don't like about Death Stranding, but
Yeah,
overall, like, I think it's, I think it's a good game. Like, I don't think it's,
sure.
overly bad in any specific way.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
go ahead.
but yeah, we wanted to talk about the main topic, and I think that this kind of feeds into that specifically, talking about Kojima, which is celebrities in games, because this is something that has always, for a long time, maybe not always, but for a long time, has been intrinsically connected to Kojima,
Yeah.
and not just him. So we wanted to have like a bigger conversation about it, and I kind of want to start this conversation by going with our like last little bit of news, because Kojima was also in the news cycle, not just for Death Stranding 2 stuff. Um, it There was an article that came out from Variety that talked about how Kojima has signed with a talent agency, WME, which from like a really brief Google search, it's like a pretty popular Hollywood talent agency.
Can I be honest with you? The first time I read the headline, not here, but just like when I saw it in the wild, I thought it said
Mm.
he's signed with talent agency WWE, and I was like, whoa, what does this mean for Death Stranding 2?
we're we're gonna get like a pro wrestler boss fight.
Yeah, yeah. But alas, no.
Um,
It's WME.
but yeah, and he was interviewed and was talking about Kojima Productions in a wider sense. And this has kind of been known for people that have followed Kojima. Like, I don't think any of this is like particularly like new news, but Kojima has always kind of seen Kojima Productions since breaking from Konami
Yeah.
as like his avenue to like
His creative
create
outlet.
art.
Yeah.
Right. So like it wasn't ever going to just be like a game development studio. Like, they were always going to expand into other formats, and they've
Right.
already started doing that. Um Obviously he's partnered with A24. I believe they're doing a film with Death Stranding in some connection, if I remember
Oh,
that
really?
right.
I do not know.
That was announced like a year ago or so, so I'm not sure what the status of that is, but um yeah, they're working on film projects. And basically in this interview with Variety, he was talking about like a phased approach to Kojima Productions. I believe, according to Kojima, they are in phase 2 of that three-phase kind of thing. And basically what phase 2 involves is, you know, after they're making their games, incorporating that into the other forms of media, so movies, anime, and TV. So, what we just said, Death
Yeah.
Stranding is starting to branch out. Games like OD with Xbox, he says is
Yeah.
it's kind of a risky type of game that's melding live action and video game interactivity in some way. So
And he's
right
working
now,
on this a spy like a Metal Gear
mm,
Solid game for PlayStation as well.
Fizzant, yeah, and
You shouldn't have told me the damn name again.
yeah, but what's interesting that you bring up Fizzant is that I believe, I don't have this written in our docket, but I think I saw on there that he views Fizzant would be the start of like the phase 3 kind of approach
Yeah, and I
where
believe Phase 4 is when Iron Man dies, so it's going to be interesting to see how that leads up.
yeah, obviously with Kojima nothing's ever just like straightforward. Like
Yeah.
you can't ever follow exactly what a Kojima
I
thing is, I think.
appreciate the man's cooking, but at the same time, it's like
Mhm.
he takes so long between games, and he's got 3 games, and like I forget what state of play or whatever it was where they announced the Fizzant, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was like right after a Death Stranding trailer. Like they showed Death Stranding 2, and then
Yes.
they're like, but wait, we got one more Hideo Kojima. And then they're like, we're working on another thing. It's like, we get, sure, but like let's get one game out first. I mean, he's already like, I would imagine the lineup of these games would be Death Stranding 2, and then and then OD, and then you go back to PlayStation with this. Guys,
Mhm.
just please put the games out so we can play the games. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, so basically with all that said, yeah,
but
I took that from you.
well, no, you know what? Look, the reason why the game, if we're being honest, the reason why it's taking so long to make Death Stranding 2 is because Hideo Kojima's over there making his human artist Pokédex. You know, he's filling out his Pokédex. It seems like every person that visits him has, if there is a person that is a creative person, I should say, that has
Mhm.
mentioned the name Hideo Kojima, he will invite you to a studio and scan you in. I think if you just stare in a mirror and say his name 3 times, you'll get a baby will deliver the message to you. Of course, the baby will
Yeah,
come out of your throat and with a little note clutched in its fist. But
it'll
yeah,
be covered in ink.
yeah. Look, even like Rajamouli. If you don't know who Rajamouli is, he's an Indian film director who most popularly made RRR, and like which was made it a huge phenomenon. But I remember, like, I like Nick, I can't tell you how surreal it is. Like, you know, I've been watching Rajamouli movies since I was like 10 years old, right? Like I know
Mhm.
his movies, no, like even younger. So like for me, it's like this person who I think has made incredible stories since I was like a child, and then for him in 2023, I guess is when it happened, to be being scanned into Hideo Kojima's database. I was like, this is like two worlds fucking colliding at one. It was a mind blowing event.
Mhm.
But he's doing it with everyone. I mean, and along with this, you know, uh, along with this news, they also announced that George Miller. They gave him a name too. I forget what the name is. It's something Man. It's Macho. Not Macho Man. I forget what the name is. But yeah, like they just announced the George Miller is going to be in it. The director of the Mad Max
Mhm.
movies, and Happy Feet, of course, most popularly. And
Yeah,
who else was in it? There's someone else. There's Dakota Fanning. Is it Elf?
yeah, their character was named recently. Like we knew that they were going to be in the game, but
Right.
yeah, they all got, their Kojima. Like I think her name is Tomorrow. So like, it's Kojima stuff, right? And that kind of ties in what we're talking about with the artist Pokédex that you were talking about, because obviously back when Kojima was at Konami, we started seeing a little bit of this. I feel like the first like big kind of moment for me personally was when Snake was recast for Metal Gear
David
Solid
Hayter
5. For yeah, it was David Hayter and went to Kiefer Sutherland.
from
And that I
24.
remember people were talking a lot about at the time. Obviously people, rightfully were upset that David Hayter wasn't
Yeah.
Snake for the last game that Kojima was theoretically going to be working on. So, um people had some issues with that. And then also when Phantom Pain came out, I remember a lot of criticism, something that I myself also felt when I played it, where it's like, okay, so we got this big actor in Kiefer Sutherland, playing Snake, but the voice lines are so much more scaled back that like it just sounded like they didn't have the money to pay for it, and like
he
they
charges
got
by the
like
word.
exactly. Like in old Metal Gear games, when David Hayter, like those are famous for like lengthy interactions on the codex thing, when you're talking, and just like in game, Snake having like a lot of dialogue, and then it feels really out of place in Phantom Pain when he's just like, kept you waiting, huh? And then he's just silent for like the next like 20 minutes while Otacon and Ocelot are talking. So it's like that's when I first kind of noticed a lot of the conversation around like celebrities, specifically with Kojima. And then obviously Death Stranding. I mean, like,
Well, I mean,
the
for me
majority
though,
of the cast is
yeah, for me the
famous
biggest thing
celebrities.
that Kojima, like the Kojima celebrity thing, came from PT, because that was Guillermo del
Oh,
Toro
right.
and Norman Reedus, which kind of branched off, because
For
I think
sure.
that's kind of where Death Stranding kind of was born, of like, hey, Norman, I know I said we'd work on something together. How about a walking sim? We'll just scan you in, and then people walk. But we'll need you to drink a lot of Monster, so that we could get that mocap for the drinking. That was like so that was like a big one. PT kind of introduced like, okay, this is like, we're designing this game as this is like the cover person, and I think to really open it up into the conversation that we're having here, there's one studio at the very least that comes to mind that has made celebrity casting kind of like the staple of their entire discography, if you will, and that I think is the bigger, like, it's different looking at it from the two sides of this coin, because Kojima, for lack of a better word, is an artiste, Nick. I believe that's how you say that word. And so, like, yeah, the entire cast, or the main cast of Death Stranding 1 is famous artists, people who aren't really actors, like Nicholas Winding Refn. Why is he in there, man? Get him back to making another movie. I want to watch Drive 2, Driving Harder. Oh, shit, that's a bad idea. But still, like, it makes no sense for why some of these people are in here, but it does make sense, because Kojima is like, believe me, like it's like
it has that right amount of quirk where it's just like,
and like seeing Guillermo del Toro and be like, oh, it's Guillermo.
But it's like for a very specific type of person, right?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
I feel like there's probably a lot of people that play Death Stranding that like don't know
who the
right,
who
and they're
the
just
hell,
like,
yeah. Oh yeah,
they see
guy.
like Conan and they're like, oh, I know Conan. But like,
yeah.
But even just saying that is like so wild. It's just like Conan's just like a random person in Death Stranding.
The other side of the coin, though, unless you had more, well, before we can always go back and forth.
No, honestly, Sri, I'm kind of floundering here. I'm trying to figure out how to, like, get like a path forward on this, but I think we're just finding our way here. So.
Sure. So the other side of this is who I was talking about, was this Supermassive. I think Supermassive, in many ways, with Until Dawn, like, knocked out of the park. I mean, it was the reason why I think Until Dawn worked so well was not because Rami Malek was in it. No one's like, oh, Mr. Robot, I gotta go play Until Dawn now. It's more so because the vibe and tone that they were going for, which was like a campy, like, it's campy, but like it's still serious, like a horror flick. And the difference is that you're watching this horror flick, but you can get involved. And I think that casting actors, like, Hollywood actors, added to the level of, okay, I'm watching a movie. It's also the fact that it has those Resident Evil-esque baked in camera movements. You're not controlling the camera at all. Like, it all plays together really nicely. And I think that's a big reason why Until Dawn was successful. It's not just because there's, Hayden Panettiere. I don't know if I said that name correctly, but not just because she was in it, on the cover, in a bathrobe or a towel or whatever it is. But then, since then, Supermassive has really leaned into it. I mean, the Dark Picture anthology, it's like every game they've had some sort of celebrity guest star. Even just recently, we got their, I think it's called 2090, or it's some date, but it's stars another Hollywood actress who is from James Bond, and I can't forget the Lashana Lynch, I think, or something like that. Something like that. But either way, the I think they've kind of lost a plot in the idea of celebrity cameos. That being said, brings us to the kind of wider audience of like, just video games that are putting in celebrities. It's for the sake of having a celebrity face. You have 12 minutes throwing in Willem Dafoe, James McAvoy. Is it Daisy Ridley is the other one, if I remember correctly. But like that's not. I think there's a false pretense that putting the name of the person on the poster will automatically make it a system seller, or not a system seller, a game seller or a product seller. And I have to be honest as well. Last thing before we, because there's quite a few games we can kind of tackle that have approached this, slightly different ways. But the idea that you're gonna, look, the percentage of people that are, let's say a James McAvoy fan. I think I'm a James McAvoy fan. I have not played 12 minutes, okay? And I am a gamer, if you guys didn't know. I'm a gamer who, active, like I'm constantly playing games, and I still didn't approach that game. I wasn't sold on it. The fact, a random person who's not a gamer, who's just like, oh, I love James McAvoy, his performance in Atonement or whatever, is not going to go out of the way to purchase a console or purchase a PC that could play, or even just purchase a copy of 12 minutes to play it on their PC that they have already. Like that crossover, and I would love to see if there's like some numbers on this, but that crossover has to be ridiculously low for the amount of money that they're paying for some of these artists and the amount of money that those artists are directly bringing into the game.
Yeah, writing down some ideas for this podcast earlier reminded me of conversations that I had in my friend group back in high school.
Yeah.
Because I think it was specifically around when Metal Gear Solid 5 was having all of this news come out and everything.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I'm sure that there might have been like some other game that I'm like not remembering right now, but like the role of celebrity specifically in video games versus Hollywood, because I think what this gets into is this might be a weird transition here, but
I'm ready
it'll
for
wrap
it.
around, which is things like the Game Awards and how a lot of times Jeff Keighley, again, I'm a fan of the Game Awards. I like watching the Game Awards, but like Jeff Keighley does lean into celebrity,
the high value,
moments on stage, however you want to talk about that, like celebrities coming out, celebrities reading things, and
just to really prove that they could read too. And no one asked, but like I'm glad they can read.
Right. Is that for Al Pacino? Because
yeah.
I replay clips of Al Pacino at the Game Awards so often. I love that shit. That's so funny.
It just keeps going.
But specifically, I remember talking about it, and we were always just like, well, it always just kind of feels like video games as an industry, when they do stuff like that, are like latching on to Hollywood and just trying to like seep stuff that like they don't really ever need, right? It's just like we should be elevating our own voices in our industry, not just like getting the hot celebrity to like come in and do stuff.
Like Al Pacino.
And that's something that I always like struggle with, because it's like I do see and understand that point, and like I do at times feel like, yeah, like we should be, putting these people up. It's like whenever Last of Us did it right, where they included Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson in the show.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's like, okay, like those are, very significant characters and like performances by real actors. Like, yes, it's cool that you're, including them in here. Whereas so many other properties and stuff, they'll just be like, yeah, nah, like we're not gonna bother with like, this person that's voiced this character for 20 years. Like, we're not gonna, consult them or anything like that. So
yeah,
it's like sometimes it works out, but then other times it's just like, you see some of that stuff and it's just like, okay, so like kind of what you were saying before, it's like, what is this adding to the experience?
What is the return on investment for these Hollywood actors?
is it worth like having this Hollywood actor that's already going to start pulling people out of a character potentially versus, building somebody from the ground up, with a big game, which obviously like that also doesn't work all the time too. Like think of how many games there are out there where it's like, the actor is like maybe like a Steve Blum where like they're a role that fits many shoes. Troy Baker even. Like he
Right.
goes between so many different characters and stuff. He's kind of like an outlier, I would say. Like there's definitely like the outliers that rise up, but then there's just like I don't know. It's just a weird paradigm with like,
Yeah.
celebrities like there's instances where it works, there's instances where people like it, and then there's instances where people can't stand it and they're just like, why are you doing this?
Well, I mean, the way I think to look at it, right, is why specifically some of them work and some of them don't. I
Mhm.
talked about Until Dawn, talked about 12 minutes. Look, even this month, I've if my release calendar, if my mental release calendar is correct, there is a celebrity a game coming out. Um, I think it's called The Unknown Nine, and it stars Anya Chalhotra, who's the Yennefer from the Witcher live action show on Netflix, and so like these things are happening constantly. And look, I can't speak to
Mhm.
that one because it's not even out yet. But the the point of like big celebrity cameos, the reason why in Death Stranding, along with the fact that it is like this author, whatever you want to say it, and it is this kind of a guiding hand. For the
Mhm.
most part, it is a brief, like, oh hey, look, it's this guy, and then you're going back into this to this fully immersed world. Um,
Mhm.
Rarely do I think you get a convincing enough performance out of an artist in live action to where they can be the center of attention. Again, Kojima has like that special sauce that occasionally, like, it makes sense. The way he's crafting everything is slightly off kilter, so it doesn't quite make sense. The biggest high profile star in a game recently that I can think of is Cyberpunk with Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba, both featuring key like key characters as a big Hollywood star. And I think that
Mhm.
they both to both of their credit, they throw themselves at these characters, and the result is, I think, an incredible performance on both their fronts that is a byproduct of them understanding the medium and giving a performance that matches, not just performing to what like how they would normally do anyway, because you don't always get
Mhm.
that translation either regarding an actor who is used to perhaps even a stage or just in front of a screen coming onto a video game, and they don't know quite how to like lane the voices so like it delivers in a certain way,
Mhm.
and you're left with like, oh, that's Kevin Spacey in Advanced Warfare. Sure, okay.
Or like even like with the cyberpunk example, like when certain actors come into a game, like just watching interviews where they talk about it, like they're not prepared for like branching dialogue and stuff like that, or like the
Yeah,
amount of like performance that is required for certain games, like cyberpunk, where the entire design of the RPG systems mean that like you need to have multiple different outcomes for different quests and stuff. Um, I think Cyberpunk is an interesting example because I do think that it worked well for both the characters, but also like Cyberpunk, like it still just kind of feels like game audio, right? It's like
sure.
sometimes I feel like in certain games, like kind of what you were describing, they will write it to just like being like cinematic in nature,
Yeah,
and so then it just does feel like it's just an actor playing the role versus like a character in a game. And I think branching off of that, another thing that or like another avenue that I was thinking about with this is how in games, because of the interactivity, specifically with characters, um, oftentimes we will see like the blank slate model used where the character doesn't emote a whole lot, doesn't talk a whole lot because they're supposed to be a vessel for the player, right? Famously, Nintendo stuff is a lot like this, like Link in The Legend
Yeah.
of Zelda and
Hmm.
like Mario. Like, yes, they make their noises, they make their gruffs and puffs, but by and large, they are supposed to be a very neutral character so that you, the player, kind of imprint your own, you know, thoughts, emotions, and actions onto them.
Right.
And it comes as a weird like immersion breaker for a lot of people when they see like Norman Reedus in Death Stranding, and it's just like that's not me playing. That's Norman Reedus,
Yeah.
and like it's it's funny because I think Kojima specifically with Death Stranding leaned into it in funny ways where it's just like in I've watched a couple interviews with Norman Reedus talking about Death Stranding and his time working on it where it's like he would comment on how like sometimes when they weren't even rolling, like he would just like do something weird with his hands or something, and Kojima would be like, "Do that again." Like let's get rolling and stuff like that. And he found that so like weird, where it's just like little things that are very specifically Norman
Right.
Reedus mannerisms that are captured to translate. So like Death Stranding is like a weird example where it's like
Yeah.
you are playing as Norman Reedus as a character, and not a lot of games will go to that length, nor do they. I feel like they really think that they need to,
Yeah.
like in a weird way.
The I think across the board, if I was to say why most celebrity cameos or celebrity roles in video games work, is because it's an externally motivated choice. As in the
Mm-hmm.
plot drives it. Until Dawn, I think the plot, the build of the plot drives the need for the inherently cinematic nature of the plot drives a star-studded cast that would feel like they were in an an 80s 90s slasher film.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, the choice of having Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand adds this, he's this rock star that's like super huge, and so to have him step into that role, there are certain scenes specifically of Keanu that are, and again, I think the Cyberpunk would be a significantly worse game if you were only playing as Johnny Silverhand. Like if you were the Johnny Silverhand, and then like you know everything else was kind of built around that. I think it would be a significantly worse game because
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be able to put yourself. It isn't that blank slate. But at the same time, I remember there's like a scene outside of a motel pretty early on in the movie, or pretty early on in the like first 10 hours of Cyberpunk, where you're outside the motel and you're like having this full on like breakdown, and then you're having while it's happening, you're having a conversation with Keanu, who's kind of like phasing in and out around you on this little like stoop. And I thought the whole exchange was incredibly cinematic, not just in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
the way that the dialogue is delivered. I think Cyberpunk in general has a really cinematic nature of the way you're not just sitting there. It's not you're like, look, I love Starfield, but like Starfield is literally just staring at like people staring at you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a dynamic nature to the way that dialogue is delivered in Cyberpunk, and Keanu adds that. Like every time you look at him, it's like he's a star, but like not just in real life, but in the game, and like he's not there. I know he's not there, but he's there. Those kind of things
Mm-hmm.
really, I think, elevate the choice. Again, how often are you seeing those? That's the point that is waiting to be seen. I think as we go into this next phase, as well as like Unreal Engine and like the way that the mocap is now being advanced to be able to be used, um, it only opens it up further for more celebrities to, because now you have essentially mocap setups that are almost shot like a real film, like right, like the way Avatar 2, for example, was shot was just you have a camera that's mimicking the physical attributes of a physical camera, and when you're moving through the mocap stage, the camera is recording in real time, so you can have almost like handheld shots and these things that almost let you play to the camera as an actor, which I think would only open the door further for more of these celebrity cameos or celebrity roles to come in. by and large, I should say.
There's one element of the conversation that I want to touch on, and it's because we've mentioned his name so much, and that is the role of like celebritism of the actual game creators too.
Kojima.
Kojima. I would argue in some ways I feel like Kojima is maybe even more famous
Than
than some of the people on the cast
Sure,
of the game.
100%. Yeah.
You know, I tried to pull it up here to try to organize it, but I think it's going to be too involved. But like, I remember randomly on YouTube one night seeing that Criterion Collection posted that Kojima was in the closet, the Criterion
Wow, yeah.
closet, and that is like one of their like more highly viewed episodes of that like series that they do on YouTube. Like it has over 1 million views, like at least.
Yeah.
And like I find that crazy.
Very few people, I
It's
think, in the industry have Kojima status of like name and recognition.
Kojima, I think of, you know, Miyazaki from Software.
Yeah.
He is definitely like a household name. Even Todd Howard,
Todd
obviously.
Howard, the homie.
Like,
Yeah.
And I wrote it in here to talk about like how are these people different, right? Because they are celebrities in a weird way. They are the faces of these companies in a lot of ways. And I feel like, you know, because maybe it's because, you know, there's that stigma or that like background of, you know, a lot of these people just being like, you know, computer programmer nerds or whatever.
Sure.
Like, you know, even people like Amy Hennig or Ken Levine, like these people, like we treat them differently. And like Todd Howard, I know specifically Todd Howard, Kojima, and Miyazaki.
I think they're on a certain
like,
pedestal almost of, yeah. I mean,
there's a certain level of prestige, but also like communities, like obviously with like memes and stuff. Like Todd Howard, I would say specifically, is memed to death. I would say Miyazaki, like even though like, you know, I think some of the memes for Todd Howard are a little bit more insidious than Miyazaki.
Yeah, sure.
But like even Miyazaki like has like, you know, I've seen like images of like Chad Miyazaki or like they Photoshop him under the like black and white picture of the Chad
Gabe,
guy.
I think, is another one.
Gabe Newell, yeah, that's another good one where it's just like it's weird because these people do have like celebrity status now, but like that also contributes to like profitability of a game, right? I feel like absolutely using Todd Howard in the marketing
but
of
you know what,
Indiana
Nick,
Jones.
I think that point that you made, though, I think it justifies the tie-in of why celebrity cameos are pointless for 90% of the time. And that is, if you put Todd Howard in any movie or video, like, or in any movie or TV show that's not a Fallout or, you know, Elder Scrolls, no, like the chances of some like of people spotting him and being like, oh, I know him, are sure are pretty high. Todd Howard's big, but the chances of someone specifically going out and paying $15 to see a movie because Todd Howard is in a scene, you know, that's like not worth it. And it would be even more so the case if they had to pay, you know, $1 million for Todd Howard to make that cameo, which Todd Howard probably won't ask for $1 million for a cameo. Maybe he will. I don't know. Those jackets are expensive. But you are paying an absorbent amount of money for these actors to be in video games. And that brings us back to the thing. Like, you're not getting a return on investment on a majority of the projects. I mean, look, if the actor auditions and you're like, wow, this is the best character for it, then no, there's nothing stopping you. If your budget can handle a Willem Dafoe, then go for Willem Dafoe every time. But if you're just doing it just so your fancy trailer can have Willem Dafoe stars in a point and click adventure you've never seen, you know, like it's like, okay, I don't need it. Also, what's up, noob next door? How's it going?
Yeah, I had like one final question to really pose, but I mean, you kind of already answered it, and I
Oh,
kind
I
of
did,
agree
huh?
with you. And that was in the future, is there going to be more, less, or a similar use of celebrities? Yeah, you think there's going to be more just as the technology improves, and
Absolutely, man.
there's
I
a
mean, it's just like I feel like the writing's on the wall. Unless people under Ollie's fucking shit up over here, dude. He's gonna attack me at any second. But no, unless people like there's like a wide understanding of what we're talking about here, of hiring for specifically because the actor is the right for the role. Unless there's like a wide some sort of recognition wave happens throughout the industry, and everyone's like, yeah, why are we hiring all these actors when we can just hire voice actors that are just as good, or if not always better? Then we're going to see it kind of just increase, going forward. I think that it is the symptom of the industry that, like not just the industry of the gaming industry, but the way that all these industries are coming together, right? Of the way that Hollywood is being integrated into the gaming industry, the crossovers that are happening, the successful crossovers, might I add, that are happening. Like you were saying, the fact that the Game Awards are kind of always bringing out like, oh, who's the celebrity of the year? Like, let's see who's going to be the, like make the tweets pop off this year. And that nature of it, those things will combine for just more cross-pollination between the two industries and music industry. But like, I think that's a different animal that hasn't quite been, like, honestly, if anything, I would love more music collaborations. I'd love music artists to make album like soundtracks for video games. That'd be sick. Even if it's like who was it? Imagine Dragons did the Starfield one, and then One Republic I think did Assassin's Creed Mirage. Dude, maybe this is happening. Maybe we're on the cusp of a music video game collab revolution.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is interesting that popped into my head while we were talking about that is we're also at like a weird point in history of both the industries where these collaborations are starting to happen, and projects on both sides, film adaptations and game adaptations
there's good projects on both sides.
They're gaining in a lot of popularity, but like the age of the actors and stuff means that they're kind of boxed out, where it's like, yeah, I don't really play games. Like, I'll still treat it like, any role that I get, but it's just not something I have a whole lot of background in. Whereas you get people like Henry Cavill with Warhammer, and Dude. It's like once like the age of like the actors gets to a certain point where it's just like, okay, like everybody in Hollywood has played video games or like plays video games.
Steven Spielberg plays Call of Duty. Steven,
exactly.
please come onto the podcast.
That came out like today or whatever. Yeah. I saw you sharing that. So
today.
It's just like once it matures a little bit more, I feel like that's even more like, evidence for it there being more, because it's just people will be more interested in these projects, and as a byproduct of that, honestly, people are gonna know about these
honestly, that's a very fair point, because I think you're right. Like, obviously if I go up to Bethesda and I'm like, hey Todd, I love your games, can you please put me in your game? He'd be like, stop following me for the last time, I'm gonna call the cops. But if like, I don't know, I don't know. I'm just going to say, since you said it, I can't think of anyone else. But actually, you know what? I can't think. If George Clooney comes out and is like, Todd, I love your games. I love Oblivion. I loved Oblivion. Really, it moved me. He's much more likely to be put into the game. It like just be like, oh yeah, step into the studio. Please.
Famously, that happened with Matthew Perry. He talked about loving Fallout so much on talk shows that they put him into New Vegas. So
See? I didn't even really think about that aspect, but yeah, as these, honestly, as these both these industries collide, and also it seems that as Hollywood has somehow continually like deteriorates in its integrity and its success with some of these projects that are coming out. I mean, look, Lionsgate. Holy crap. I really hope Santa hooks you up this year, because wow, you had Borderlands and The Crow back to back, and there was another one. They just released another movie that did not do well, I think. So dude, I please Lionsgate. play the next few years safely. But meanwhile, like video games are continually kind of it's a growing industry. I mean, look, I can probably bet that next year video games will make more than movies by a lot, just out of the juggernaut that is GTA 6 alone.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, no, very interesting. Look, I mean, look, the celebrity thing is going to be we're going to see it for a few years. It's going to be a constant point of discussion. And I think that now that we've had this discussion, it would be interesting going forward, seeing every new one that comes out and judging it under these metrics of like, is it necessary? Does it feel like value added? And are
they doing something interesting to justify the person's inclusion? Yeah.
Now we have a new scale. We have to. That's what we have to do. We're going to develop a. Nick, I don't know how we do this, but we need to develop a scale, a test that determines if a celebrity is necessary for the video game, and it should be like a 3 questions. Each question has like, how about like, so it's like, was the performance good? Question 1. Is the how do I say this? Was the performance did the performance add to the character or add to the experience? And was it worth what was the return on investment? And it's each of those questions. It's not a yes or no. It's a 1 out of 10, right? Is how you score it. And then the accumulation is out of 30. So however points you get out of 30 is the score. So for example, if we run through this hypothetical thing that I've just made up, Nick, all right? Keanu Reeves, what would you say? Is he good?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 out of 10?
Yeah. I would say like an 8.
Okay, 8. Does he add something to the game that's not just hates Keanu Reeves?
Yes, I would say for Cyberpunk. So
How
I
much?
would also put that at like. I'd probably also put that at like an 8 for Cyberpunk.
Okay, an 8. Okay, so 16. Now, last thing, was it a return on investment? This is an interesting one.
Yes, it is. For Cyberpunk.
Yes, I also agree. I think just that one, him on the stage saying "you're breathtaking" alone is a big enough investment. So if
the reactions prior to release for sure, like it was immediate return.
Wake the fuck
and then
up, Samurai.
After release, like with how public perception of the game was at that time, that starts to muddy it a little bit.
So what would you say?
But I feel like his
score
performance didn't really
for that. I mean, I would also say like an 8 and 9. Like that's solid. I mean,
I'd go 9 for his inclusion for the game. Absolutely.
That's 25 out of 30. That's a solid. See, on that scale, he's passed. That's a good grade. Meanwhile, Nick, I genuinely do not know the answers to this, but I know you've played it, so I'm going to ask you. Let's say James McAvoy in 12 minutes, Nick. Was it a good performance?
It was decent.
Okay, score it.
Probably like a 5 or 6 from what I remember.
Okay, 6 for the benefit of the doubt. 2, did he add something to the role that was not just it's James McAvoy?
I remember him the least out of the 3. So
I picked a good one.
I'll say like a 2 or a 3.
Okay. We haven't broken 10 yet. Third one, was it worth the return on investment? Did you buy this game?
Probably not, because I played it on Game Pass and a lot of people didn't really like the narrative. So
see, look. So I don't even know what you score it, but he's roughly ending up at a 10, a third of the full score. See. This scale works, Nick. We need to figure out a name for it, but this scale works fundamentally. Anyway, that was the ultimate goal of this episode. I think that's where we're heading. We're developing this metric system. Essentially, what's that test called? That's like, oh shit! It's like where like it like you can like see if a woman is in a movie is like a well written character, a female character, or not, or if she's like serving is it the Bechdel test? What's the Bechdel test?
I'm not sure, honestly.
So essentially, there is a test that is in movies that is essentially a real test. Like it's like it's a well established. People have used it to run compare it against movies, and it essentially runs up to like if a character, like one of the steps of that is a female character talking with another female character, and not about men. Like that's like a specifically a point of the test, and it's to justify if a movie is written well has well written female characters or not. And if you do the test, you'll find quite a few movies do not pass the test. So I think that's what we were headed. We were creating that for celebrities in video games. We got to flesh this out. But with that said, Nick, anything else you want to say about this particular celebrity cameos in video games?
Not really. Kind of feel like I fumbled a little bit with steering the conversation there, but I think overall we kind of got to the points that we were trying to get to.
We always do. We always do. Now, Nick, to end this week's episode, we got another meaty episode of a sub-episode, I should say, of the inbox. There are 6 items on the docket here today, Nick. And look, I think this is your time to roll the dice, Nick. So I will let you I will roll the dice for you, or do you have dice?
I don't have dice. I have a coin, which is not a dice.
You are correct. A coin is not a dice. All right, Nick. I'm going to roll the dice 1 through 6, whatever it lands. Dude, Ollie just keeps knocking shit off my desk. Ollie.
Just give the dice to Ollie.
Yeah, that'll do it. All right, so we're going to roll the dice 1 through 6. Whatever it lands on, that's the game you guys are going to see for this episode of the Inbox. So here we go. First one, we got a 5. Oh, very interesting. That's actually very convenient because this is the game I had open. So, Nick, get ready to put on your cowboy hat, Nick, because we're going to cattle country. So, from publisher Platonic Friends and developer Castle Pixel comes Cattle Country. Ooh, a cozy cowboy life sim adventure where essentially you are a determined pioneer traveling west to start a new life in a pixel art prairie paradise. Think, Nick, this is the pitch for this game, all right? Think Red Dead Redemption meets Stardew Valley, and you're right to you'll be heading to the right rodeo. So on October 25th, so later this month, fans will be able to saddle up and check out Cattle Country's PC open beta via Steam, and of course you can leave feedback to help the game as it continues. Again, it's coming out October 25th for the open beta, a glorified demo, if you will. And so if you want a taste of what Red Dead Redemption meets Stardew Valley has an offer, or has to store, I just mixed those up. Has in store and what it could offer, then wait just a few more weeks. I'm sure I'll give it a shout out before the date actually launches. But of course, I want to give you guys the information as soon as it comes out. Do you have something?
I'm kind of surprised that this concept hasn't been more widely adopted. I feel like that's a pretty slam dunk.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, I'm actually, this is one I'm going to be jumping into myself because I am curious. I like Stardew Valley. And look, I think Red Dead Redemption speaks for itself. I think it's sales numbers alone and ratings speak for itself. So we've gone 2 hours and 20 minutes into this podcast, and apparently that's my speaking limit for the day because I'm slurring my words. Nick, let's roll the dice again, and we got a 3. Oh snap! Oh, this is one I've been looking forward to. I think this is a cool one. So I don't know how to introduce it, so I'm just gonna say it right off the bat. Like say it for what it is. This is actually, never mind. I don't know how to say the name. Tanuki. I think that's okay. I'll just show it to you. This is Tanuki Pon's Summer. So this was also revealed at the Tokyo Game Show, specifically the Xbox Tokyo Game Show. And essentially, from Critical Reflex and indie developer Denki Works, Tanuki Pon's Summer is a colorful, epic, and chill adventure about an adorable BMX-riding mailman set in a delightful Japanese town. That's exactly what I was waiting to tell you about this, Nick, when we're talking about USPS games thriving. This is it. This is another one. So this game is coming out for Xbox One, Xbox Series XS, and PC via the Microsoft Store and Steam soon. We don't know. There's no exact date, but step into the furry paws of Pon and BMX in style as a part-time mailman in a picturesque Japanese town, delivering packages, pulling off tricks, and helping out locals with guests. In this awesome summer adventure, you'll enjoy fun activities like bug catching, plating sushi, baseball, sumo, and more, while unlocking a variety of decorations to restore the Great Tanuki Shrine for the end of summer Matsuri Festival. Look, the game looks awesome. It's got good animation and good vibes. That's all I needed. And also has a raccoon. You know I'm in. I've been told by several people I look like a raccoon, so it's got to be, at this point, I'm guessing it's a compliment. All right.
Yeah, I saw that trailer before, and I thought, it starts like, with this nice animation, and it kind of sets up certain vibes that you have, certain expectations.
Yeah, sure.
And then whenever it cuts to gameplay, it's one of those ones where it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool.
All right. Let's roll the dice again. Hopefully it's not a repeat. Would you believe that it is 3 again? Let's talk about Tanuki Pon Summer one more time. All right, number 2. Oh, snap. This one just came in earlier today. So a last-minute addition to the inbox. But Nick, let me introduce you to a pulse-pounding co-op multiplayer roguelike, Kernel Hearts. This was just revealed from Whitethorn Games, our good friends over there, as well as Affirma, and it is as I had said in the introduction, an intense co-op multiplayer roguelike. So in this game, a combining challenge. Oh my gosh, I am shutting down as we speak, apparently. The game combines challenging hack-and-slash gameplay with role-playing and roguelike elements with stunning anime aesthetics. You will battle your way up to a deadly celestial tower, building your arsenal of skills with each mortal demise to eradicate monstrous angelic enemies and dethrone a god to save the world. That sounds pretty intense, Nick. So, yeah, you play as a member of... Oh, my God, there's a transformation scene? I didn't even make it this far in the trailer. Oh, my God.
Very anime.
Very anime.
Everything.
As a member of the MAHOU unit, an elite fighting force of superpowered android magical girls, Nick, you and up to 3 allies are tasked with one thing: to destroy a god, to save a world from the brink of extinction. That's the only reason I thought of this game. That's the only reason why it's here. There's no other reason. It's coming out to PC via Steam, so keep an eye on that one. Let's go back to the dice. Come on, give me something good. Ooh, 4. Oh, snap. Okay, this one. Look, I really like the look of this one. It's just that I think it might not be a fully polished product just yet, but this is also a new edition. It just came in today, and this is just announced. So keep that in mind. This is Slavic Punk Old Timer. So previously, this game launched on PC, and it's coming to PlayStation and Xbox on November 6th, 2024. That's the version that was just announced, I should specify. So the game invites players to step into the shoes of Yanis, a private investigator with a troubled past, who must uncover the truth behind a stolen data carrier while facing urban gangs, corrupt corporations, and his inner demons. Known for its mix of fast-paced combat, modular weapon customization, and immersive storytelling, the game blends elements of a good old shoot-'em-up with battle hacking and puzzle solving into a gritty, dark future with a distinctly Slavic twist. Did I say Salvic earlier? I meant Slavic. If I said it wrong.
Said Slavic.
Okay, well, good. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah, this is the console debut, so it's coming to Xbox and PlayStation. So, check it out. November 6th, 2024. Slavic Punk Old Timer. It's already out on PC if you can't wait to get your hands on it. But just a few more months. Now, 2 more items. I think there's 2 more. Yes, 2 more items. Let's see what the dice says. God damn it, it's 3 again. Let's talk about Tanuki Pond Summer one more time.
Wait, we have 2 left? I can do the coin.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, that works. There you go.
All right, let's make sure. Yep. Okay, this has 2
Heads
different
or
sides.
tails?
Tails.
I didn't establish which one was which. Actually, one of them starts with an
Tails
H.
should be.
One of them starts with an H, so that I'm going to say that's heads. So I'll do the other
All
one.
right.
Oh shit, Nick! Watch out for goblins. Sorry, that's exactly what the name of the game. I'm not saying that you should watch out for goblins, though. I suppose I could say it's dangerous to go alone. Watch out for goblins. I don't know if that would have been any better. But this is the debut game from Squid Studio, SQYD. And it's a 3D physics platformer where essentially you ragdoll your way through a variety of levels. So become a certified goblin royalty, exploring and collecting cogs to repair Gobland, all while getting up to hijinks along the way. Blending motion capture animation and real-time physics, Watch Out for Goblins allows players to slide, somersault, and soar through the air, all in the name of saving goblin kind. I really picked an assortment of you have to save the day type of games here. Yeah, this one, honestly, I think sometimes I tend to lean for the a little bit like serious story and like narrative driven games. And that's exactly what this is. So I hope you guys appreciate that. Watch Out for Goblins, coming 2025.
I'm gonna say this is in a very sincere and very, like, I'm not making fun of the game for saying this.
Yep.
Way. This looks like a modern version of something that would be at home on the original Xbox from that trailer.
No, I could,
like,
yeah.
the kind of vibe and the type of game,
the editing and
even like the
yeah.
UI. It looked very, very OG Xbox era, which I love.
So the game is also coming to Steam Next Fest 2 weeks from now on October 14th. There will be a demo, so you can play the game for yourself and see if it is just like that, an OG Xbox game. And that brings us to the heads of it all, Nick. A very special game because it looks cool. Now, actually, before that, I will shout out that Crow Country, a game that we had previously talked about on the podcast, and we have an interview with the developers. You can check it out on respawnstation.com. The game just announced that it's coming to Switch and PS4 just in time for Halloween on October 16th. So if you want a little spooky time, check out Crow Country. A very PS1 styled horror game. If you don't know about it, again, respawnstation.com. Check out the interview. It's a good interview. Wouldn't you say, Nick?
Yes, I would.
I got to make sure. I got to keep him on his toes sometimes. Another thing, quickly, that I'll throw out there: the asymmetrical horror shooter Predator Hunting Grounds is on next gen consoles now. So PS5 and Xbox Series XS. For those of you who are have not yet checked it out, it's a good one from Milphonics. Now, the last game for this episodes of Inbox is Hirogami. Japan-based publisher Kakehashi Games and the development team at Bandai Namco Studios Singapore are proud to reveal the gorgeous origami-inspired 3D action platformer Hirogami. This is a well, here's the thing. In Hirogami, players will explore a beautiful origami world as Hiro, a fan-wielding master of the art of folding. They'll explore every nook and cranny to discover hidden secrets, unfolding into a sheet of paper to ride fiery updrafts or becoming a paper plane to traverse dangerous chasms. Players will also discover new forms to help them traverse the world, solve puzzles, and best their foes. Roll through obstacles and enemies alike as a hardy armadillo, traverse the treetops and pound pests as a mighty ape, and leap to previously unreachable heights as a formidable frog. This is coming out on PC to PC via Steam later next year. But again, we don't know exactly. There's no exact date on that. But you can wishlist the game now on Steam to go help him out. And that "oh wow" from Nick was authentic because he did not.
Yeah, that was an authentic reaction. That reminds me a lot of Tearaway. They have a very strong paper kind of art style. That looked awesome.
And that's honestly that's why we have the show. That's why we have the inbox. So hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, check out watch.respawnstation.com for more. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a 2.5-hour episode today. So if you enjoyed, well, leave a rating on Spotify, any podcast platform you listen to this on. Nick, do you have anything else to say to the people?
I hope you enjoyed the extended chat about what we've been playing. I know we were a little light
in that
department.
10 minutes, I think, we spent on that.
Good half the podcast talking about that. So we definitely got into some good stuff and definitely some stuff to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, definitely. With that said, people, as always, thanks for watching. Head on over to respawnstation.com if you're watching this live or within the week that it is coming out, because you can go and vote for the next retrograde episode. It is a horror selection. One game is currently in the lead, but as we found out last time, that doesn't mean anything until the clock hits, is countdown and the polls are tallied, or the votes are tallied. So go ahead and vote, not just in the general election, but of course on retrograde. But with that said, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.